Welcome to Unraveling Education, the podcast that's part storytelling, part information, and part whodunit. We'll be investigating the underlying issues harming the public education system and identifying the key players involved. We're back and we're ready to bring the episode home, aren't we, Rose? Okay, here we go. Let's do this. You ready? Yeah, let's do it. She says yes. Rock on. All right, we left off with the item where Jara was rehired, an absolute terrible meeting. Once Lola and Evelyn knew that they had control back, they were going to put the three of us in our place. In an earlier episode, I promised that I would be telling you about the time our board attorney high-fived another trustee after causing chaos during a board meeting, and I'm about to deliver on that promise. An item is put on the board agenda to investigate trustees. The item is definitely to investigate the three of us, but they're acting like it's not. They're acting like it's going to be for the whole district or whatever. We know the truth. I say that you are gaslighting me. There's a comment made about the superintendent process. I say there was a plan. Evelyn gets pissy with me. Evelyn leans back to where the microphone wouldn't pick her up, and she says, "You are the rudest person I've ever met in my life." I lean back where it can't pick me up, and I say, "Okay, well, you're a phony." She looks at me and she says, "Why don't you say that to my face?" And I say, "I just did." And none of this can be picked up by the microphone, okay? But then she leans forward to where the microphone can be heard, and she says, "Why don't you say that to the microphone?" And then I lean forward and I turn my microphone on and I say, "You're a phony baloney. That's what I just said to your face." And chaos ensues. Let's take a look at that. Be careful not to miss the high five that happens on the right side of the board for the viewer. Oh, hey there. This is Danielle from the future. The Danielle in the episode trying to explain all this was 10 plus hours into recording and moderately delirious, which will explain a lot as you continue through this episode, which then concludes the Jesus Jara Chronicles. I will be jumping in as needed to act as your friendly narrator to ensure absolute clarity during a few important parts. Now, allow me to restate where we're at this point. After Jara was fired at the October meeting, we added an item to the next meeting in November to determine how to select an interim superintendent. Jara had been terminated. This was a necessary step, but some trustees were in their feelings about that fact still. They tried to complicate it, but we were able to come up with a plan and next steps to receive applications for the position. When voting for that plan, 3 trustees voted no, and Irene Cepeda abstained. She cited that information had come out and she couldn't move forward with anything at that time. This was the same time frame I told you about in part 2, when Irene was being worked on and bribed to retract her vote weeks before to fire Jara.
Motion on the floor by Trustee Ford. She moves to notify the public that the CCSD Board of Trustees is seeking an interim superintendent. Deadline is the 10th. Communications Department of Clark County School Board will be the entity that is putting out this release. Trustees, we have a motion on the floor by Trustee Ford and a second by Trustee Guzman. Please cast your votes. That motion does not pass. We have 3 yes votes from Trustee Cavazos, Trustee Ford, and Trustee Guzman. We have 3 no votes from Trustee Garcia Morales, Trustee Brooks, and Trustee Williams. And we have 1 abstention from Trustee Cepeda. Back to the drawing board. Okay. At this point here, I want to give respect to Trustee Cepeda and give her the opportunity, whether she wishes to explain abstention.
Yeah, too much stuff has come out since the 28th for me to, in good conscience, be able to vote for this.
All right. Thank you, Trustee Cepeda. So that motion fails.
After the meeting in early November 2021, that meeting when the plan to appoint an interim superintendent failed, we then hear that Irene Cepeda wants to change her vote to fire Jara from 2 adjourned board meetings ago. Those rumors are confirmed by a request from Irene, Lola, and Evelyn to re-vote on my item to fire Jara from October. I showed you that whole mess at the end of the Jara Chronicles Part 2. What I didn't include was the other item placed on that same meeting agenda before the unfiring item. This item was made to seem like it was to investigate all executive employees and possible harassment at the executive level. For instance, the board's chief negotiator's claim against Jara that was covered in Part 2, which had not yet been discussed or addressed by the Board of Trustees. But the actual intent of the item, which Evelyn and Lola had Irene Cepeda request in her name, was to investigate the 3 trustees that Jara was claiming were retaliating against him and creating a hostile work environment for him. I read that letter, which included a demand for $2 million of taxpayer funds in Part 2. So here's how that item went.
So this is an outside expert to conduct an investigation to allegations of a hostile work environment at the executive and administrative levels of the Clark County School District. I am going to go ahead at this time and turn this over to Trustee Irene Cepeda.
All right, so thank you very much, President Cavazos. I bring this item with the assistance of some of my colleagues here because for the past 20 years, we've cycled through 5 superintendents, and it's very clear that we have a relationship problem. It's a culture problem. I think we hear it very clear from a lot of folks here that there is a culture issue, and we still haven't done anything about it. As a board, we set the tone. Our actions ripple across a community. It typically is the conversation at the water cooler or whatever it may be these days. But it's something that we need to finally address. I think after 20 years, and the reason we can't keep a superintendent past 4 or 5 years when we know it takes 3, 4, 5 years to monitor goals or to make any type of change is really troubling for me, especially being in this role. Granted, we're a very new board and we're learning things. We're learning very painful lessons the hard way. But my question for the board is, do we want an investigation or not? That's the purpose of this agenda item. If yes, we would then be able to direct staff to identify some neutral third parties, identify what it would cost, and have a conversation about parameters at a different meeting where it's a little bit more properly agendized. This is a first step to a deeper dive into what our culture looks like. Because at the end of the day, it's really about how folks feel when they come to work, because then again ripples out and has implications across the district. So
All right, so thank you for that clarification. Trustee Garcia Morales.
I'm really eager to see what it will take to improve communication, minimize overreach, put an end to micromanaging. The end goal, the expectation, is to understand what's preventing us from developing working relationships between the board and its only one employee, ultimately helping us ensure the success of our organization. This is why at this time I'd like to make a motion to authorize up to 4 members who are not named in the demand letter to work with the purchasing department to identify and select a firm not to exceed $100,000. Authorize the CFO to identify funds in the general budget, and work out a timeline and present it to the board after the firm is contracted. I'd like to embargo the investigation so that information named within the claim until final results are reported. And finally, I'd like to ensure all staff complies with the investigation.
So I'm not going to pretend that I remember every single thing that you had said there. It sounds like it was very well thought out.
I feel that this particular motion, when stated by Trustee Cepeda, sounded like a good idea. But when defined by Trustee Garcia Morales, the way that she did, told me that there will not be trust on this board, and that what the 4 trustees would like to do is provide further division within this board.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Ford.
All right, well, I think that motion pretty much answered my question, but to clarify, is this item intended to investigate the 3 trustees that Jara named to the press, which are President Cavazos, Trustee Guzman, and myself? Is that what this item is for?
Are you asking Trustee Cepeda, or are you asking the maker of the motion?
Either one. I don't know if
Who has the answer?
It's my motion. I'm happy to.
Trustee, I'm going to leave it up. Trustee Cepeda, is it fine with you? It is the motion of Trustee Garcia Morales.
I was pretty clear when I said that my motion was to authorize up to 4 members who are not named in the demand letter to work with parties to ensure that we can move this process forward. So I'm not sure what you're asking
Move
exactly.
the
If that's not
process
clear enough for you.
forward by investigating who?
The allegations of the demand letter.
Okay, so the 3 trustees who would not be included in this process are the ones being investigated, yes or no?
That's not, I'd love to understand a little bit more about your interpretation.
Folks, trustees, it's really hard to hear up here on the dais, you know, if we have people muttering and talking, so if I could ask for your courtesy, please. Go ahead.
Sure. I often say that this board gaslights me. This is an example of that. My question is not unreasonable. I'm being extremely clear. Stop acting like I'm the one who's causing a problem here. I asked you very pointedly, is this investigation intended to investigate Trustee Guzman, President Cavazos, and myself, or not?
I feel like I can answer this question. I think I understand. So the purpose of this investigation is to understand the relationship as a whole board in the context of the relationship with the superintendent and his executive cabinet.
That's not what the motion is.
So, again, she's asking that we set the parameters of what that looks like, because we're not named in that lawsuit. But at the end of the day, my purpose is to make sure that we look at all of ourselves, every bit of what we are, individually and as a board, in relationship to how we function with the superintendent, because we have spent a year without any student outcomes. There is no communication here.
Does that
The
answer?
president sets the agenda.
Okay, does that answer your question, Trustee Ford, or did you have a follow-up?
My question is answered. It's what I thought it was. And I'm just going to say that the allegations brought up after Jara's contract was terminated have nothing to do with a hostile work environment. I'm happy to be held accountable for my actions, but I'm absolutely not going to allow myself to be a martyr. And I'm not going to allow myself to be distracted by this when we have more important work of the district going on right now. So absolutely not will I support this.
Thank you, Trustee Ford. Trustee Brooks?
We find ourselves in a situation that cannot be addressed in any other way because we're elected officials and we're in a different boat than everyone. And the facts that we're operating on, at least the 3 of us I know are operating under, is that we have information, we have access to more information than the public. And pushing these issues under the rug versus facing them head on is the exact reason why this board continues to function like this. And if the board cares about transparency and growth, they should be willing to face some uncomfortable truths. And this cannot be investigated internally because it's a conflict of interest for one of our employees to investigate the highest chain of command, which is us. So I am going to be in support of this.
So I basically trusted that what was in the agenda item is what we were going to be addressing. It would be then that the 3 of us then are the ones that would be basically targeted. It would not be an outside investigation of a general hostile environment. It would be Trustee Guzman, Trustee Ford, and Trustee Cavazos, myself, who would be targeted in that.
We have, I believe, a serious allegation, and it is incumbent on us to hold ourselves accountable as a unit. So I've already clarified what my intention is with my motion. I'd like to ask my colleagues who are not in support of this item what it would take for them to be supportive of this item.
I feel that this particular motion is creating a divide. What it is not doing is it is not looking into the hostile work environment that is defined in the actual agenda item, which was for the superintendent and the cabinet, which is something that was brought to us. And I thought that because we have gone through quite a few superintendents, and the original discussion from Trustee Cepeda was to look into and find out about why that environment is encompassing, which I thought was like, yes, let's look into that, because I don't want to go through a superintendent search in 3 to 5 years again. But the thing is that what you're saying is that this really isn't to look into that at all. This is to look into a document that is pretty standard when someone is let go, and take a look at a standard letter and utilize it as a way to target trustees sitting on this board. And although I understand the motivation behind it, because I have worked with you all, I am uncomfortable with the motion, and I feel that it is not following the agenda item, and so I will not be voting for it.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Ford.
Thank you. So if the intent of this item is for all the trustees to be looked at, as was stated, which means investigated, then it wouldn't make any sense to exclude the trustees who are already named in a demand letter, which is not a lawsuit, which is just a letter. That's it. Which in this letter, the allegation cited as hostile work environment didn't even happen until after termination happened. So we're going to look into all the trustees from a letter that doesn't cite any hostile work environment, yet select only a few of the trustees that are going to be investigated to make that choice. That makes absolutely no sense. Hold on, I have a system. Oh yeah. I cannot even explain how many times I've proposed something and given ideas and plans and details and even slides, and then was turned down because I wasn't clear enough in my explanation, and there wasn't reference material, and trustees were unable to visualize what I was saying, and it wasn't responsible for the board to approve something that was not clearly defined and not planned out. So I think a recommendation, a good middle ground, could be possibly to just pass on this item and allow Trustee Cepeda and or whoever to come back when they actually have something substantial and reference material that shows some firms we might select and shows some data and some estimated costs and is a little bit clearer in the ask. Then we could have this conversation again and decide if that's something that we want to move forward with. But as it is, not only does it not make sense, but it's not something that the board would ever approve if it was me making the motion.
I'm really sorry that you feel that way, that my colleagues feel that way. This is not intended to be personal. We have to own our part.
Great. So it's no from me.
Thank you for sharing that insight. I'm really sorry, again, that my colleagues feel that way. That is not the intention of my motion, and I see how if I'm naming a demand letter and referring to it as excluding members of from a process, right, that this could be seen as something that's a personal attack. I've repeated several times that this is an opportunity for us to look at all of us as a unit. It has been told to us, we've been told time and time again that as a board, we could be functioning better with respect to communication and trust. I don't know what else I can say other than I apologize if you feel that this is directed at you.
That's not how apologies work.
Excuse me?
You don't say, I apologize if is not an apology.
Trustees,
Trustee Ford,
Add
what
that
would
to
it
the
take?
list for training in the future.
What would it take for me to, for you to
Trustees,
feel that way? I mean,
this is not a presidential political debate, so we can, debate things and everything. This is, I would like to have one trustee at a time speaking and not be interrupted. Please.
yeah, so I don't see how removing this altogether is middle ground, but I appreciate the insight that my colleagues have shared. My motion stands.
Cast your votes. So that passes, and I'll just kind of go down the row here. Trustee Williams, you were an aye?
Yes, I vote aye on this motion.
Okay. Trustee Guzman?
No.
Trustee Ford?
Hard pass.
I believe that means no. Trustee Brooks?
Aye.
Trustee Garcia Morales?
Aye.
Trustee Cepeda?
Aye.
Trustee Cavazos? No. And so that does pass 4-3.
Now, again, we covered most of this meeting in part 2, but I left out this gem because although it's quick, it's important. Now, here's where we left off. Be careful not to miss the high five that happens on the right side of the board for the viewer.
The thing that drives me the most crazy here is that there was no plan. I voted thinking maybe they have a plan, but there was no plan. I was secretly hoping that there was a super secret backdoor deal plan that would have some sort of succession plan, that would have some sort of plan for all the programs that still that are happening, for things that still need to be done. But it was just a quick drop, and all I'm really begging for is a proper transition plan. I am begging for a means to transition to not lose knowledge we have, because while a lot of people here are doom and gloom, there's a lot of cool things that have happened. And that's kind of what hurts the most, is that everything we have done is so terrible, but there are a lot of good things that I want to make sure do not die, do not fall through the cracks. Not perfect. But at the end of the day, at the minimum, we need some sort of plan, some sort of transition plan, so that we could have a proper search, so we don't have to rush through things, so that we don't have to throw everything into chaos, because chaos is a ladder. For any Game of Thrones fans out there, chaos is a ladder, and who is trying to scurry up this ladder is beyond me. And all I want is a proper plan, a proper plan to transition from one superintendent to another, and it means that it's not chaotic, and that we could take the good, leave the bad, have a year where we actually have student outcomes. We have not done one of those this year. Not one single one. And that, we talk about kids. Not one single student outcome this year. Who sets this agenda? There's only so much we could do when we are asking for things. We're asking for things kindly, and it has come to a point where we had to get 3 trustees to put anything on this agenda, anything on this on a meeting. So it is so frustrating to be on this Titanic where it just seems like nothing we can't move forward here. So what I'm really asking for is, I'm sure he's not gonna stick around. All I'm asking for is a proper transition plan, a way that we can spend a proper amount of time vetting the next superintendent, a means to be able to take the good, leave the bad, and have a year where we actually measure student outcomes for at least a couple items a month, instead of not one single one this year.
Thank you, Trustee Cepeda. I do want to jump in here for a minute and say that at November 14th meeting, there was a plan, and I had worked with Ms. Miller on this.
I asked in May.
Yes.
We've asked in person. Again, as more things. Okay.
Hold on. I think I have the floor right now, and I've asked everybody to be polite about that. So on November 14th, we worked for an hour, and I believe it was 42 minutes. Please. Stop.
You are a phony baloney. That's what I said to your face. Phony baloney.
You know, this is, Trustee Ford, Trustee Morales, I would hope that we would not ever have to, I would hope that I would never have to clear the dais because of two trustees, not because of a problem in the audience. All right, please stop.
If you're watching on a video platform, you may have missed the high five entirely, so let me go ahead and slow it down for you.
You are phony baloney.
Now, what reason could the Board of Trustees legal counsel possibly have for high-fiving a trustee during a moment of heightened board conflict? A trustee who is proudly anti-public education, by the way, who supports the agenda to dismantle the public school system entirely. Can anyone think of any reason for this high five? And in case you're wondering, our attorney, Marianne Miller, never had to answer for that high five. That high five between trustee Katie Williams, the one who once bored chaos, and our attorney did not go unnoticed. It was spread around social media, and the public was basically calling for our board attorney to be fired. So November 22nd, 2021, we get called in for an emergency closed session. There are 3 attorneys there. There's Marianne Miller, the high fiver, our new attorney who we had already been introduced to, new Nicole Malich, who was supposed to be training under Marianne for another couple of months until she took over for her after she retired, and both of their boss, Steve Wolfson, the Clark County District Attorney. So Marianne opens it and she says, "This is going to be the last time I'm working with you, but I wanted to make this transition easy for you." And then she explains that a couple hours before the meeting last Thursday, she met with Dr. Jara's attorney, who wouldn't say where Dr. Jara was on accepting his position back after he was rehired by Irene. But he did say that if he did accept his position back, it would only be with the acknowledgement that he's not giving up his claims that he put in his letter, to which he now is at a $2 million payout. And a return to work on Jara's part is not going to operate as a waiver of that. His attorney says that Jara would be open to mediation about his outstanding claims. And then Nicole says that she has talked to some attorneys in her office, she's reviewed the letter, and that she would like to talk to us about how to immediately respond to a request for mediation. And then Marianne Miller asks Nicole if she would like to take it over from here. Nicole says, yes, I would. She explains that the demand letter, he prefaces it around a hostile work environment. That sounds scary to non-lawyers. It sounds like it's hostile, but that's not the case. In the letter, he doesn't state any actionable claims. So her question is, does he have any actionable claims? A hostile work environment, she tells us, has to be based on a protected class. She says, I don't know what protected class he's referring to. Anyone could be a member of a protected class, but it would come down to gender, ethnicity. I don't know if he'd pull the Hispanic card because he's Hispanic, but over half the board is Hispanic. The male thing might be my guess, but he didn't state it in there. And she says, my thought is that before we agree to mediation, we should have him present us with actionable claims. I'm impressed with Nicole at this point. She's like actually wanting to do her job. Okay, this could go well. And then, but Marianne interrupts and says, if he's alleging a Title VII type of claim, then that's unlimited damages theoretically. And then Nicole's like, right, but he would have to go to the EEOC. I think before we agree to anything, we should make him say what it is. He can't just say they're being mean to me. Whether or not any of you actually are, there's no valid legal claim there. And then Steve Wolfson says, let me jump in. Mary is the expert, but there's nothing to lose by asking his attorneys, hey, what are some more details of this? What are we looking at? And if they're acting in good faith, they'd have no problem saying, here are the details that contribute to a Title VII claim. And he says, and the thing is, Title VII claims often get sent immediately to federal court, which require mediation anyway. And then Marianne says, yep, anything federal that they say goes to mediation. So basically they're telling us, like, starting to hint at we should probably just do mediation anyway, because even if he tries to push it to court, we'll be in mediation anyway. So then I jump in and I say, I'm thinking back to October 28th when we had a closed session and then Dr. Jara directed his staff to leave. And then he, right before the meeting with the vote on his termination, and I'm pretty much like explaining this for Steve Wolfson because he's there, right? Saying it again. I go, he read a statement that said, I want the board to know I've been a victim of hostile work environment. And then he named me, Linda, and Lisa. He cited a text. He cited whatever. And then my ethics complaint from a couple years ago that was closed out.
Then he said, I want to know what the board is going to do to support their only employee. I await your decision. And then he left. I said, we talked and I asked if the ethics complaint was harassment. Marianne, you said no. I told the board, Marianne said I could file it. After I asked you to look into it, you said file it yourself. So that's all that he brought up before the vote. Marianne goes, yes. And I told you that a single incident, unless it was something like sexual in nature, doesn't count as harassment or hostile work environments. And Nicole says, these incidents would have had to be severe and pervasive. But I haven't got to my point yet. I said, okay, but my recollection and understanding was, and it was chaotic. We were like, where is this coming from? But then the conversation turned into, what are we going to do about this? Should we pull the item? At which point I was like, hold on, is this legit? I'm the one who requested the item. I want to move forward with it. Some of the trustees were very concerned that our one employee had these accusations against us and wanted to pull the item. It was strange timing before the meeting, even though it had been agendized for several days. And I'm bringing this up because we should have had this conversation then. Why weren't we told what hostile work environment meant then? And even if we had to delay the start of the meeting a little bit to continue that conversation, that would have been helpful as opposed to only hearing it right now over a month later after a vote to fire him was taken and then retracted. Like, why are we just hearing this now? It was never told to us that he should have to explain his claims. Marianne, you were right there. Why didn't you tell us this? You came up to me asking, after that meeting, oh, what number do you think would be a good number to settle his claims? You told me, you said, do you think $100,000 is doable? You were negotiating a payout with him right before the meeting to fire him, right between firing him and him coming in and ambushing the board with claims. Like, you didn't do your job. You didn't tell us this. We're all hearing this now. So many things happened in this last month that did not need to happen and would not have happened if we'd been given this information. And then Marianne goes, well, I don't think you guys would have stopped. And then Katie goes, I agree. I said, stopped what? Marianne goes, what you had put into motion for that meeting. I go, no, I don't think we would have stopped either, but we would have gone forward with the certainty with all trustees knowing that he would need to prove a hostile working environment and that he had no valid claims. Marianne goes, well, he didn't go forward with a written demand until after that action. And then Lola is like, what's your question? Can you get to the bottom of your point? I'm like, we should have heard this a month ago on the 28th because we were all left to walk out feeling like we don't really know what's happening. We're in the middle of chaos. We didn't know what hostile work environment meant. We didn't know if we were about to make a decision that was going to harm the district. I'm frustrated. I like what I'm hearing right now, but it's unfortunate that it's come to this before we were able to hear it. Evelyn's like, what I think is unfortunate is that in 2020, trustees sought to terminate Jara. During the renegotiation of his contract, again, there was pressure to terminate him. On October 28th, he came to us with a statement. He asked us for help, but it didn't matter. You terminated him for convenience. This is only a snapshot of what he's been through. So now, when we ask his attorney for evidence, and then Nicole's like, not evidence, just what he's basing his claims on. And then Evelyn's like, well, he could say, for example, that he's always on the chopping block. And Nicole goes, well, it's got to be based on this protected class. Like, you have to relate it back to that. Evelyn goes, I see. And Steve Wolfson's like, that's the condition preceding a viable lawsuit, that there has to be a protected class. If he can't prove that his behavior affected him, it goes no further. And Marianne's like, not necessarily. He could bring tort claims, and that has a $150,000 cap on them. But if he's using the hostile language, that's federal language. Then Evelyn's like, let me ask you this. Who specifically gets to decide which actions are hostile in the workplace? We've already answered this a million times. Nicole's like, well, he can tell us which incidents he's alleging are hostile. When this trustee did this, when this trustee did that. I would ask for a list. I would look into it, talk to whoever is referenced, and determine whether or not that's hostile. Evelyn goes, isn't another option for us to mediate? Nicole's like, absolutely, we could, but first I think we should see what he's got. If he's willing to share it before we ever agree to anything. Then I ask, is that your advice for us? Is that what you think we should do? And then she says, yeah. And then Irene says, I'm supportive of this request of specificity of claims. It also sounds like all roads lead to mediation, so I'm supportive of that. I go, no, not necessarily, no. Nicole goes, yeah, not necessarily. He could come back and we could look at the list and go, there's no need to mediate. And then Steve Wolfson says, who's the first person to bring up the word mediation? Marianne says, I believe it was John Bailey, and he seemed open to it. And Linda Cavasso says, I know that John Bailey is on the executive board of one of our closest partners, the Public Education Foundation. That would not be a conflict, would it? Nicole goes, no, I had a concern about something else, though. It'll come to me. And then I said, I believe it's a conflict because the PEF are the community partners helping to determine the spending of the $777 million of COVID relief money. Nicole goes, yes, that was it. Marianne goes, I'm not sure if John plans to abstain from that or any activity around that. Then I said, it just seems like they would benefit by having Jara remain as superintendent because it was his decision to put them in control of those funds. And then Nicole's like, maybe he's not planning on doing litigation. Maybe he just helped with the demand letter. And if it goes to litigation, I would be shocked if he did it himself. And then Marianne says, yeah, there must be another firm lined up. I don't think they do much litigation. They do business litigation. So then it just goes back and forth. Like Lola jumps in. She says her opinion. Couple things. I'm not sure he can prove the protective class, but I have no doubt that he could prove some sort of harassment. My question is about the claims. If they're severe and he documents them and strengthens his case in court law versus us agreeing to mediate now. It seems like if we came to the table recognizing that some of our shortcomings, that maybe that would soften the blow and maybe we get through this a little better. But what is your legal opinion? And then Nicole's like, what are you suggesting? Lola says, I'm saying if he documents these claims and they are proven and they're not a protected class, but they do fall under some sort of tort, is there a benefit of doing that if we know that we're going to be in mediation regardless? Nicole's like, so you're saying don't even ask him for the claims and just agree to mediation? Lola goes, do you think if he maps these out and they are severe enough that they are more harmful than not? Nicole is like, no, I think we've got a pretty solid. And then Marianne goes, let's say he maps it out. Okay, well, you won't be going into it blind. You have to know what your exposure is. And Nicole goes, yeah, but it could be nothing. And then Lola said, did he provide a list of assurances or example of assurances? Do you know how other boards have provided any assurances? And Marianne goes, I'm not aware of any other boards. Nicole says, you guys are rare. Lola says, okay, other question. What additional liabilities exist if the behavior he claims exists continues beyond the point of time that he is claiming? And then Nicole's like, if he comes back, I'll probably bring someone from my office to go over some things. And Lola goes, let's say that they come in, they give us advice, and some of us continue. And then Marianne says, if you guys identify actual problems and you do the things to mitigate, you exasperate them. Lola says, so if he writes a letter and says, these are the actual problematic behaviors I've personally been experiencing, and then if members of the board continue to have those behaviors, and that increases our liability. Marianne says, if they're actionable behaviors, so it would behoove you until you know what your exposure is. Then Lola says, but if he doesn't list those behaviors, then is there a liability or not? Marianne says, if he doesn't tell you specifically what needs to improve, then I think that hurts his claim. Lola goes, okay. Then Katie chimes in, my only question is if we go to mediation, are there actionable items? And he has a valid claim for whatever reason, and then those behaviors don't change after we've settled that. Then he has a new claim. So this meeting with Steve Wolfson, Marianne, and Nicole goes back and forth. They're telling us that the superintendent doesn't know if he wants to come back to work. He's suggesting mediation. He's not willing to let go of his claims. He thinks that he's now owed $2 million from the board. And now we're discussing what next steps are. We end up being told at the end of the day that our new attorney, Nicole, who I'm liking what I hear from her, says that she really feels that Jara has no claims. Hostile work environment must be a protected class. It must be something to do with your gender or sexuality or something like that. That's not even if the things that me and Linda and Lisa did are bad, which they're not. It's still not that actual hostile work environment protected class. So I'm super pissed that Marianne didn't teach us this stuff, tell us this when Jara came to us on October 28th with these claims. Any normal good attorney would have said, he just said you have a hostile work environment against him. Here's what that means. I don't think that you have that. But no, she let us think that maybe Jara is owed something. That put fear and doubt into Irene. She's the reason why all of this shit happened, okay? So we go back and forth. It's a very long conversation. Everyone's trying to be nice because Steve Wilson is there. He ends up kind of chiming in and going like, who is the boss here? Which also sounds good to me. Several trustees are trying just to go to mediation and negotiate with Jara and come up with some sort of settlement for him without even finding out if he has claims or not. It's just it's wild. Okay. I remind them that many things have come to our attention in random ways that have gotten Jara extra stuff. For instance, when Lola figured out, oh, the superintendent has a different interpretation. So we go back and forth. Because 4 of the trustees want to do mediation, Nicole is ordered to find out what mediation would be like and also send a list of assurances that the board is going to agree to that will make sure that we can have like a peaceful working relationship until whatever Jara's claims are settled. And at this moment, his only claims are hostile work environments, okay? And our new attorney has told us that he does not have any of those claims yet. The 4 trustees want to offer up maybe just like negotiating anyway. So at the end of this meeting was basically Steve Wolfson saying, thanks for letting me listen in. And by the way, Mary Ann has been your counsel for a few years. She won't be here anymore. And then he says, look, I'm going to say something candid. I know there's been less than total respect shown to my lawyers. We don't always disagree. I get that. But I want this board to treat my attorneys with professionalism because we are required to provide you with legal services. But I also have certain options. And that's not a threat. I don't ever want to go there, but just be nice to my attorneys and they'll be nice back. You have tough jobs and you need to repair your image and you need to move forward as a board. And then Nicole says, like, I'm looking forward to working with you. And that meeting ends.
Knock, knock. Who's there? Interrupting future Danielle. Interrupting future Danielle. Let me reiterate exactly what happened at the closed meeting that District Attorney Steve Wolfson attended for absolute clarity. Wolfson told us that Marianne Miller would not remain our lead attorney through January like we thought. There was no mention of the high five, which the community was furious about. There was no discussion or reasons given for Marianne failing to inform us about Jara's claims being baseless for months. And Steve Wolfson reminded us multiple times about how bad our public image was and how crazy and unprofessional we appear to the public. Wolfson made veiled threats about taking action against us if needed, reminded us that our attorneys report to him, and strongly encouraged us to settle down and move forward in a positive and constructive way.
So Nicole emails us saying that her office agrees we should send assurances, and they're very basic. I was fine with these assurances. It was like, we're not going to call Jara after working hours. Everything will be with a liaison, like just normal stuff to have a normal working relationship, whatever. Nothing happened. We didn't hear from Jara. He's not working. So October 28th is when he was terminated. And now we're in December. That has been more than 30 days. He has not come back to the office. Everybody is doing his job. He's doing things here and there, like giving $500,000 in cabinet raises, but he's not actually performing the work of the superintendent. Evelyn then calls an emergency meeting out of nowhere early December to find out if the superintendent is still hired or not, because he hasn't been working. Now I know that this was a plan, which was a pattern with them, to open communication with Jara to give Jara a reason to bring something back to us. Okay. So the 4 trustees direct Nicole to find out if Jara is working, if he's coming back, what would it take to get him to come back as superintendent? How would he feel comfortable working with the board in a manner that he will know for sure that he won't be experiencing a hostile working environment? And then he comes back with counter assurances, and it includes that all of us will not talk to the media or post anything on social media about him or the district. He wants a public apology from Trustee Ford, and he wants all 7 board members to agree to his assurances and sign them. He was very clear that it must be all 7. I tell them no, there's no reason to even discuss this anymore. There will be 6 signatures on that. There's no way in the universe he's getting my signature on that. I'm not saying shit publicly, especially not an apology. It's pointless to continue this discussion. If you continue this discussion, you're living in fantasy land. It's basically what I say. Nicole recommends that we reconvene the next day. At that time, my kid had a doctor appointment. So I say I'll call in. The next day I do call in. They're all in person. I'm on the phone. The discussion continues. The 4 had time to talk about it, make a plan, right? Conversations going in a certain direction. I'm aggravated. I let them chatter for a minute. They mention the signatures again, the 7 signatures, like I didn't already tell them no. I interrupt. Let me stop you right there. I already told you no. But since that's not good enough for you, I'll tell you that I consulted with an attorney. I've known that something like this is going to be coming. Jara is very predictable, and I was advised to never, ever, ever give up my First Amendment rights, which is what Jara is asking. Then Evelyn gasps, oh my goodness, hold on, Trustee Ford, you spoke to an attorney? I feel violated. This is all supposed to be confidential. Then I say that I did not share anything confidential, that Jara keeps on doing the same shit and getting away with it. and you're helping him. Of fucking course, I consulted with an attorney. Are you serious right now? And she asks our new attorney, Nicole, what to do. And Nicole says, well, if Trustee Ford did share information from our meeting, then she may have breached confidentiality. She may have waived all of your protection. And then Lola exclaims, that's just great. Of course Danielle did that. Of course she did. Irene stammers, I just don't know how we're ever supposed to get anything done. I say, I did not breach confidentiality. I know what that is. I know that I can talk to an attorney if I want to. And then Evelyn says, I don't feel comfortable discussing this with Trustee Ford present. Who else doesn't want Trustee Ford involved in sensitive matters that concern the superintendent? And then they voted me out of the closed meeting. Voted me out. And our attorney allowed it. I'm on the phone. They're discussing, should we vote her out? Do you want to hang up? Do you not trust her? Do you not trust her? Yeah, we don't trust her. Okay. And you? And I'm outside the doctor's office, like yelling through the phone. Oh, hell no. I did not breach confidentiality. I can get legal advice for myself all goddamn day. You cannot vote me out of a meeting. I represent 170,000 constituents who elected me to be their voice at times like fucking exactly this. I did not breach confidentiality. Didn't matter. Evelyn goes close to the phone and she says, unfortunately, Trustee Ford, once again, you've put us in a tough position. And until we know for sure, we'd rather be safe than sorry. Click. Hangs up on me. I'm calling attorneys. They voted me out of a closed session about Jara. I'm calling the news. I was on the evening news that night, but now I actually was at risk of breaking confidentiality by disclosing what happened in a closed session. So I tried to say it in a way that didn't violate confidentiality, but it really didn't do it. Here's a clip.
I spoke with Trustee Danielle Ford tonight, and there is a lot that she cannot say because of closed-door meeting laws and confidentiality. But she has long been vocal in her opposition for Dr. Jesus Jara as the leader of CCSD. She even filed an ethics complaint against him with the Attorney General's office. That was back in June. In October, she was one of 4 trustees who voted to end his contract early, but that vote was reversed a couple weeks later when Trustee Irene Cepeda flip-flopped and voted in support of the superintendent and keeping him under contract. Tonight, Trustee Ford confirmed to me the board has decided to keep her out of some of their meetings after they decided to bring Dr. Jara back. On Twitter, she posted, there are current issues related to me, an elected official, being excluded from board attorney meetings purportedly for violating confidentiality. There is no established precedent for this action, and there is no definitive proof that any breach of confidentiality occurred within the parameters set previously. Trustee Ford represents District F. You can see that on the bottom left corner of your screen there. In response to her post, people are questioning how their voices can be heard if their rep is excluded from some meetings. We reached out to CCSD about this, and so far our email has gone unanswered. The school board is set to meet this Thursday night. That is when we expect Superintendent Jara to make his return. He has an item on this week's agenda. He has been absent from school board meetings since the deeply divided board's vote back in October. Live tonight at the Update Desk, Kim Passoff, Fox 5 News, local, Las Vegas.
And so that's like so fucking wild, right? The fact that they can do whatever they want behind closed doors, unethical, illegal, violation of their oaths of office, and they can get away with it. But if I tell anyone that that happened, then I could get in trouble. The fact that that's how it works is the main reason why shit is bad in this school district and other school districts that have board members doing exactly this. Okay, so next, Jara sends a letter to the media basically saying, congratulations, I will be working again. And it has been 6 weeks since he was terminated. Okay, and his employment contract clearly says 30 days. The board puts out a collective joint statement, and I correct that on Twitter. Hillary Davis from the Las Vegas Sun says Superintendent Jesus Jara is staying with CCSD. Here's his statement and a collective one from the trustees. I'm not even going to read it because it's too dumb. I respond, not sure it's technically collective if I received the statement for the first time minutes before you did, but sure, yeah, okay, this is where we are now. Cool. Oh, and BT dubs, I'm not sure how it works since I'm no longer a trustee, but if I am breaching the board's confidentiality and if I'm waiving the CCSD school board's legal protection by sharing information from closed sessions, then good. So next, it's January 5th, 2002, and we have another closed session. Nicole, our new attorney, tells us that Jara's attorney, John Bailey, offered 3 mediator names. The one that they chose was the Honorable Elizabeth Gonzalez, Betsy Gonzalez. She's a retired judge and that she now works at a mediation firm. Linda Cavazos asks, is she in the same firm with Jackie Gloss, District Attorney Steve Wolfson's wife? And Nicole says, yeah, she's with that firm, but the mediators work separate from each other. Nicole says she's not sure about the format. Every mediator has their own rules and ways of doing things, so she doesn't know how it'll work yet. They can make their own terms. They might say that I want these people there, or sometimes it'll just be one person or everybody, but Nicole will be there and she'll probably ask her colleague Scott from the DA's office to help her with backup. She explains to us that mediation isn't binding, and if mediation doesn't work, then Jara could pursue options like litigation or arbitration, which is binding. And then Lola wants to know, how do we determine the topics? Should we all submit ideas for topics to mediate? Nicole goes, well, it's just the things that were from his original demands that are still pending and his claims that are still pending. No extra stuff, just the things that we left with a question mark. Lola's like, She wants to throw other stuff in there to give to Jara. Okay. And then I ask, I'm unclear. I thought that we were doing these assurances just to get through figuring out if Jara has claims or whatever. And then Nicole is like, that's right. I go, okay, but now we're trying to negotiate the assurances that Jara sent back to us, the things that said to give up First Amendment rights. She goes, yeah, well, when he sent it back, then that became like a demand and not just assurances of good faith. So I don't know why we even accepted that, but whatever. I'm trying to understand. I go so essentially we were hi, I don't think that you have any claims against us, but we know that we need to address the fact that you do think that, and we don't want a big fight about it. So here's a few assurances, a few gifts for you in good faith, because we're nice, for you to borrow as long as you need. And then Jara was counter offer, I'll accept these gifts, but only if you give me these gifts too, and I get to keep them all forever. And then we were I guess 90% of them are fine for you to keep forever, but let's talk about that extra 10% a different day, at mediation. And Nicole's yeah, that's basically right. I go, well, I didn't realize that we were agreeing to permanent demands and not temporary assurances, but it's not like it would have mattered anyway because I didn't even agree to the first ones. And so Nicole's I'll update you all when we know more. So we have another meeting with Nicole. She advises us that we don't need to do anything. Jara probably doesn't have any claims. He hasn't done anything, but half the board wants to do mediation regardless and directs Nicole to figure out mediation. So she's I don't know how this is going to work, but I guess. So she goes and she talks to Jara's attorney and they plan on mediation, and the mediator is the one who comes up with the process. And this is where it would be great if I could get some weigh-in or comments or something from attorneys or somebody who knows the law, because I don't know what the hell this process was, but this is how we did mediation, okay? So Nicole explains that the mediator decided that because there's 2 factions of the board, each side will discuss with themselves and choose one person to represent that side during the upcoming full-day mediation. We will do a group call where each side will reveal at the same time who they chose, and that way neither side can change their answer based on the other side's person. Okay, so this is why I want attorneys' opinions, because I don't know that this is normal. This is the wildest thing ever. So we've got our board attorney who's appointed by the district attorney, and her job is to represent the board. And then we've got Jara, the board's only employee, who hired an attorney to sue the school district, the taxpayers, for mistreatment by the board. Our board attorney has said Jara has no claim. She says, I'm not worried about him winning anything. I can't imagine that any judge, jury, or arbitrator would give this guy even $1. That's what she said to us. But despite our attorney telling us that, 4 out of 7 trustees still want to give him money, a lot of money, which came from the pockets of their constituents who elected them to be good stewards of their public funds. And the 4 are so determined to give this guy a lot of taxpayer money that our attorney has to break us up into 2 groups. The group that wants to give Jara the farm and the group that wants to protect public money that is intended to be used to educate children. And it's being made into a spectacle. This process only would have made sense if it was a reality show. Okay, teams, time to make your pick. Which 2 trustees will face off with each other in the trustee mediation showdown? That's what was going on, okay? Christ.
Future Danielle again.
When recording, I forgot to mention that when Lisa, Linda, and I talked, I immediately said, whichever of you wants to go do it, I'm good with. I figured the obvious choice was either of them, with Linda having experience as a mediator and Lisa having attended many mediations. They responded in unison, oh no, you're going. The other side was as surprised as I was. After learning that her and I had been selected as representatives, Lola asked, if one side strongly disagrees with the other side's choice, could they be forced to choose someone else? I think that Team Jara chose Lola because of her ability to wear people down, but I had built up a tolerance over the years, and at this point, I was immune to her. By the way, Jara did not get an evaluation in 2021. He spent the first half of the year eating up the board's time and resources with the Evergreen scheme. And in the second half of the year, in lieu of an evaluation, what he got was fired and then illegally rehired, and then his faithful 4 trustees to put the other 3 trustees under investigation. So that's what Jara got instead of an evaluation. Okay. Board tension is at an all-time high. There's a fucking war between the 2 groups of trustees. You know the image of a duck sitting still on the water, but under the surface, the duck's legs are going crazy. That was me, Lisa, and Linda at board meetings, knowing that we are in the middle of a lawsuit. The entire district is on the line. We're outnumbered, but we're not going to go down without a fight. So we will just sit here and smile and appear calm on the surface, but underneath we are just absolutely raging. Officer elections happen as they do at the beginning of every year. We've accepted that we'll continue to enter into battles knowing that we're going to be defeated. Linda nominates me for board president. Lisa seconds. We vote. It's a no, 4-3. Irene Cepeda is nominated president and seconded. It passes 4-3. The end result of the board officer elections going forward into 2022 with a superintendent who had been wounded but came back and is now out for blood looked like Irene Cepeda as president, Evelyn Garcia Morales as vice president, and Lola Brooks as clerk. This is already lining up to be a super fun year. The next work session in February includes Deb Oliver to help us plan Jara's evaluation for 2022. There's going to be a new format that the officers decided on, the new board officers. They're just making up stuff at this point, which they had been, but now they're not even trying to provide logic for it. They're drunk on power from Jara getting rehired. Now they're controlling Irene Cepeda, and they are retaliating against the 3 of us any way they can. Deb explains that for this year's evaluation, Jara chose 6 things from the strategic plan that he is open to being evaluated on. From those 6 things, the board can choose 3. We go through a whole dog and pony show led by Deb Oliver where the 6 things were posted on the wall, and we walked around and we had to write which ones we thought should be the one, and this performance where we pretend like we are in control of any of this at all. I mostly just observed and took pictures of all the slides and giant post-its because I cannot do the pretend theater. Actual theater is a different story. So there were 3 goals that we landed on. One was around diversity, enrollment, and achievement in advanced coursework. The other one was to increase or maintain the percentage of students who feel safe at school to 90% or greater, as indicated on the district-wide survey. And then this one, it's important, was to ensure all students have access to highly effective teachers, administrators, and school staff, and was to conduct a broad information gathering campaign on the working conditions of district employees to include licensed employees, substitute teachers, and support professionals at schools and central office locations. Okay, so that doesn't say anything really, but those are the 3 that the board agreed on being Jara's evaluation, essentially. The 3 of us, of course, put how stupid all of this was on the record, but it didn't matter. Back to mediation. Lola and I are both given an attorney to basically represent us against each other, against Jara. Okay, so we prep for mediation through phone calls and meetings. We're asked to provide any documents or evidence that we think Jara might be able to use against us. If he happens to be holding out with any real claims, I print a binder full of everything, good, bad, everything. The attorneys go through it. They're 100% certain that Jara has no claims. Mediation should be a breeze. Now it's February 2022. You know when prisoners of war are asked how they managed to keep their sanity, and then they respond that they had to create their own forms of entertainment and activities? Well, a couple years into all of this, I did a similar thing, but my version was asking myself daily, how can I best fuck with Lola Brooks today? So most of those activities were premeditated, but sometimes opportunities just presented themselves. For instance, the morning of our full day mediation with Jara, Lola and I somehow
took the stairs on different sides of this building, and we arrived at the second floor where we both had our own very long walkway, maybe 20 feet apart from each other, and then the walkways joined at the entrance. This would have been a very long and awkward walk, except I lunged forward and then shouted, "Shall we have a foot race?" And then Lola took off, and then I took off towards the entrance where the attorneys were waiting and watching us. Lola won, but that was because I was wearing heels and I was laughing my ass off the entire time. It's the little things. The next time that Lola moved that fast, though, would be a few hours later when she ran out of the conference room screaming that she can't work with me. Now let's discuss those hours. Before that mediation, Nicole, acting as my attorney, had prepped me. Nicole had told me to dress nice, that the mediator is neutral, but she's not immune to her own biases, and Jara is going to tell her like all this stuff about me, and Lola's probably going to do stuff to try to set me off, so I should show her a different side than he's portraying and not respond to Lola in any way that would prove her right. And I am not a fan of business clothes. Clearly, I feel constricted in them. I just know I'm going to spill something on them at some point, so I avoid them. But I was like, all right, I'm going to be professional as fuck. Okay, I got one of those nice blouses with a secret button, which is like how you know it's good. And there was zero cleavage, and it had a fancy, like, cute little bow tie thing. And it was like, who's even the lawyer here? I don't know. And then I put my hair in like a smooth ponytail, like out of my face, all smooth and nice, so that I couldn't fling my hair around the whole time like a crazy person, which is a pro tip for women with ADHD and long hair who are trying to mask their ADHD symptoms. Write that down. So my plan was to sit there all professional and calm with my boobs tucked in and my hair neatly back and just like respond to everything that Lola says about my behavior with like a confused look and a normal tone, like, whatever do you mean? And just gaslight the fuck out of her. That was my plan. So the mediator, Judge Elizabeth Gonzalez, Betsy Gonzalez, spends the first hour with Jara and his room full of attorneys from the Bailey Kennedy law firm. I had just started learning how to crochet, and so I brought it with me to pass the time. So I would crochet a little bit, and then I'd ask Lola, like, is this good? It wasn't good. And then I'd crochet some more, and I'd ask Lola, like, does this look straight? It wasn't straight. But she kept replying, no, it's not. No, it's not. Until the mediator finally came in the room and I put my crochet away. She says hello to me, Lola, and our attorneys, Nicole and Scott. I expect the mediator to ask us questions, to ask our attorneys if they think that Jara has a claim, get more facts from our side. She does none of that. She sits down and she says, here's what Jara wants to settle this. And she pulls out a few copies of a document, which is a new version of Jara's contract. That's the only thing she's brought with her. She tells us to look through it, and if there are any parts that we don't agree with or we want to negotiate, she can take that back to Jara and his attorneys. Lola's on board. She's looking through it. I'm like, I don't even know where to start with this. The mediator says, well, let's take it line by line. She starts reading the first line and asks, and how does that sound? Are you good with that? I ask, do you have a version of his old contract? How am I supposed to know it's different? The edits aren't even marked. And she says, no, she doesn't have a different version. So I pull out my iPad, I open up his contract, and I start comparing. I begin pointing out things that are totally different in every single line. Lola and I are not agreeing on anything. Most of my energy is going towards like remaining calm and sharing my opinions professionally because I'm trying to convince the judge that I don't use bad words and I don't cause a scene when dealing with Lola and Jara's trickery. This comparing of the documents continues for maybe 10 minutes, and then I snap back to reality. I straighten up and I'm like, wait a second, this isn't what we're supposed to be doing. We never agreed to negotiate anything to do with Jara's contract at all. The board sent us here to settle. I pull out my notes. These 6 things that Jara included in his suggested assurances and his claims that we don't agree with and were not included in the joint statement like he wanted. Number 1, the possibility of the assurances being put into Jara's employment agreement permanently. Number 2, future termination language. He wants the possibility for cause and convenience to be changed so that he can never be fired for cause, and if he is, then he gets the same payout if it was for convenience. 3, the non-disparage agreement / our First Amendment rights being included in the assurances, the taking away of our First Amendment rights. 4, the claims of retaliation by trustees by termination in response to Jara's claims on October 28th, which are the Scooby-Doo meme and the obituary meme, the conversation that Trustee Guzman had with her boss, some text message from Cavazos, and then 6, a breach of his contract. These are the things that the board knows are up in the air. They sent us here to negotiate. Nothing to do with his actual contract. The mediator says, well, all of that is included in there. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, we're negotiating whether or not Jara has any claims. Like, why don't you ask our attorneys if they think that he has claims? And then that's when Nicole enters the conversation. She says, Your Honor, I don't believe, and my entire office agrees, that Jara has no claims against the board. The mediator responds, well, I need something to take back to him, so can we follow the instructions that I gave you and go through that document and then tell me the parts that you don't agree with? And by the way, the changes to the contract that we were going through were things like a salary raise, a contract extension, an apology, promises not to talk to the media, promises not to say anything negative about Jara. I say, so should I just cross out everything? Nicole jumps in. She's, here, Danielle, let's go through it together. Then the mediator and judge says that she will give us more time, and she walks out. Lola's looking through it. She's making notes. I'm talking to Nicole, but Lola's in the room. I'm saying, this is insane. We're supposed to be discussing the assurances, not his contract. Nicole was like, I'm sorry, I was really caught off guard by that. I'm asking, what do we even do now? Nicole suggests that we just do what the judge is asking, point out the differences and all the things that Jara added in, and then say that we don't agree with him. And I say that is impossible. She says, let me try. She's comparing his contract on my iPad to the new document. She gets through the first paragraph and she gives up. Lola's like, I'm doing just fine with this. He wants his contract extended to this, but maybe we say only this long. Mila, come here. Come here, big girl. Okay. So then I say, I'm not doing this. I put down the contract. I pick up my crochet again. The mediator comes in and goes, okay, well, where are we? Nicole speaks before I have a chance to. She says, we're struggling with these directions. Half of my client doesn't feel like this is what was agreed to. We would like to discuss Jara's claims before going forward. And then the mediator's demeanor changes. She's like, well, we could discuss his claims if that's how you want to spend your time today. Okay, is it true, Ms. Ford, that you sent a man to the superintendent's private residence? I say, are you talking about when I had him professionally served for a meeting? She says, and do you believe that that is your job to do? I say, yeah, it was. And I had it in writing from our attorney that it was. She gets flustered. She goes, and do you think that posting an obituary online about the superintendent is professional? I say, it wasn't an obituary. It was a meme. It was a joke. She says, it wasn't a joke. It wasn't funny. I say, are you sure? Did you actually play the video? Because the music makes all the difference. I can pull it up for you. I start opening my phone. And then she goes off. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you should consider yourself lucky that Mr. Jara is naming the board as a whole and not suing you individually, because from what I'm seeing, you've given him a lot to work with. I reply, you tell Mr. Jara that if he wants to bring those claims against me personally, I welcome it. Tell him to please do that. Can I just choose that option right now? And then Nicole interrupts, Danielle, stop talking. Your Honor, I would like to speak with my client alone. The judge leaves. Nicole's like, what the fuck is happening? Lola goes, I told you this would happen. It's in your best interest to negotiate with the superintendent and just stop your games. The board wants us to work on this, and so far I'm the only one even doing what the board asked. I say I need to use the bathroom. I remember what the board said, and I have my notes, but I'm like right now needing like validation from someone outside of this environment. I three-way with Linda and Lisa. I say, okay, without sharing details from mediation, can you confirm that my understanding is correct, that the board's direction was to negotiate those 6 things only, and we're not negotiating a new contract for Jara? They're like, what? Yes, we can confirm that. Oh my God, I'm not surprised by this. And I'm like, I need you both to look into any connections between the judge, Betsy Gonzalez, and Jara, and the judge and Jara's attorney, John Bailey. Like immediately, like right now, if you find anything, send it to me. I go back and I'm thinking about the best way to do this so that I can say that I actually tried to do the job that I was sent here to do while not going along with Jara's plan. So I say to Lola and the attorneys, okay, here's where I'm at. I want these assurances settled so that we can move on. Jara can bring new requested employment terms separately. I am not moving forward today until those assurances and his contract are separate, and I see several ways to get there. Let me lay it out visually so that we're all clear with the options that I'm proposing. And so then I make a flow chart and I write it on the whiteboard. Lola's arguing every step of the way. I keep flow charting. She's getting more pissed. She storms out of the room while screaming loud enough for the whole floor to hear, I can't work with her. She is impossible. And then Scott leaves with her. Okay. And then Linda and Lisa start sending me articles that show that the judge and Jara's attorney, John Bailey, do have a long history of working together. He's made a lot of money with her help. Not going to go into all that, but you are free to Google it yourself. I showed Nicole. She's like, I don't even know what's happening right now. We just need to get out of here without giving Jara anything. I don't know if we will even have a chance to discuss his claims and say that there's no claims. And I felt bad for Nicole. I knew that she was trying her best. I know what she's going through. I know what these people are like. An hour-ish later, the judge comes back in and Scott follows. The judge is in a much better mood. Nicole and I thought that she was with Jara, but she had been chatting with Lola instead. The judge says, here's the update. They have a termination provision that they're going to provide. We're going to talk amongst ourselves and figure out a counter offer that would be subject to a majority of the board approval that offers to extend the term of his contract through June 30th, 2023, an increased salary that hasn't been determined yet that we'll talk about today, no payment of attorney's fees, a joint statement where the parties make no admission of fault or guilt, that everybody is moving forward and that the kids are going to be placed first. The assurances that are in this would be part of the contract modification and the clarification that it is not binding on the individual trustees, and add a paragraph 9 to the termination for cause provision that basically says in the event of a termination for cause that Dr. Jara could institute a review via arbitration, and if the basis for the termination was found to be unfounded, that the termination would be treated as a termination for convenience. So the judge reads all that to me, and then she looks at me and tells me, we wanted to involve you since we've been talking about the process and how to do it, okay? I said, can I speak to our attorney alone? The judge/mediator says, you can. I'll step out, but I wanted you to feel like we're including you. And then Nicole goes, can you not go back to him yet? She goes, I'm not. The door closes. I turn to Nicole. How lovely that they want me to be included. What is the nicest way to say fuck no to her? Because I am losing my patience right now. Scott goes, well, so what's happening is she's trying to come to an agreement in concept to take back to the board. I said, I've been down this road before though, this conceptual road. Conceptual things get Jara extensions. Scott goes, and this would too until June 2023. I point at him. I go, nope. Then he sighs. I say, I'm sure that this is very frustrating for you, Scott. I like you. Me telling you no to your face does not mean that I don't respect you. And then he goes, I understand. I said, I don't see a way out of this unless Jara wants to go, like, I don't want to deal with this board anymore. How much can I get out of them? And I'm happy to give him a nice little severance package if that's what he wants. There's $5 billion annually that Jara can waste. I'll give him more than the community will be happy with to get him the hell out of here. Have we considered that? Let's see if we can do that and make it worth his while. And Scott goes, we have not considered it. I go, can we? If she can come in here with this nonsense about where we're going to possibly offer, can we send that over there? I mean, I'd rather give him nothing, but if he needs to feel like he got whatever, then fine. Scott said, okay, but I think that the judge is going to go back to him and say, this is what they're offering. I go, how? Because then why am I here? And Scott says, Lola believes that she can get a majority of the board to agree to this. I go, so what? Maybe I think that too. Maybe I talked to Irene yesterday and she's on my side now and I have 4 votes. Scott goes, yeah. I go, yeah. So then there, I do. I think I have 4 votes. Scott goes, okay, so she's going to try and come up with something to push the full board to vote on. I go, fine. Lola can do that after today. Scott goes, right. Since this can happen outside the process, what's the objection to having it happen as part of the process? I'm like, because the process is important. People knowing which process was followed and why matters. If they want to go do that in their way that is sketchy and not subject to the public eye, then they can go do that. If I'm going to be a part of it, we're not going to go do that. Nicole goes, because if we walk out of here with this, it looks like Danielle agreed to this. We were told that we couldn't bring back an agreement that the two of them didn't agree on. I say, yeah, and I think that I have Irene's vote from previous conversations where she did not want to pay out the superintendent, and I do not think this would get a yes. So Lola can think what she wants, but I think that I have 4 votes too. Scott goes, okay, would you be okay with letting it go in front of the entire board? I say, no. He goes, not through this process? I say, exactly. If it's out of my control, then it's out of my control. Scott, again, I don't know why I think he just wants to win something, okay? Or he supports, I don't know what, but he was really wanting this to go through. He was feeling defeated that like an agreement wasn't coming out. He goes, so probably what's going to happen then is if formally nothing comes out of this process, it'll be off the books. So she'll go back and say, we think that a majority of the board will agree with this. So technically, if nothing happens in the mediation, I go, wait, who would say that? He goes, the mediator. I go, why does she think that? Because Lola said it? Well, I think the majority of the board will not agree to it. So she can't go say that to Jara. He goes, yeah, the mediator is going to say that we don't have an agreement walking out of mediation to take in front of the board. No official agreement. It's all kind of informal under the table. I go, well, we don't have any informal agreements either. Scott goes, but the mediator is in effect working out the arrangement that one of us that Lola believes will be accepted by the entire board. So she still is accomplishing the task of coming out of mediation with a proposal. I go, okay, well, again, just because Lola believes it, so what? She can believe in unicorns. It doesn't mean anything. Scott's like, okay, well, everyone agrees that nothing comes out of it today is going to be final. I go, I think that paying him to leave would also get approved. So maybe we can do 2 of them and bring them both to the board and see what gets a motion. If we're trying to get the best bang for our buck from mediation, then let's get both sides of it. Scott goes, is there a limit to how much you would be willing to pay him to leave? I said, I would not just want to go in there and offer him the world or whatever, but I would say $100,000 would be easy for him to say yes to. I said, even higher than that, I would welcome it up to what he's owed in his current contract, which would be almost a year of pay. Nicole is like, that's 10 months, roughly $290,000. I said, maybe she can help format both of those things to bring back to the board and we can see what the board wants to do. So then Scott goes to Nicole. He's like, do you want to do that? You want to try it? Nicole's like, we could ask her. Scott goes, Lola would not agree to that. Nicole goes, oh no, but Danielle doesn't agree with any of the stuff that Lola said. I don't think it's fair to leave mediation with an agreement that the 2 of them don't agree on. Otherwise, there's no point in both of them being here. Scott's like, we wouldn't be leaving with a formal agreement. I go, we can leave with 2 informal ones to give the board choices or nothing. Scott goes, it would be something in principle that could come in front of the board even though there's no formal written proposal coming out of mediation. That's what she's going for. I go, she's only going for 1 based on what Lola wants. Oh my God. Scott goes, right, because if she goes off of what you want, there's not going to be anything to take back to the board and her job is to generate something to take to the board. I said, we can take the resignation agreement to the extent that he would accept it. And then Nicole starts backing me up. I don't think Irene would go for that, honestly. Scott's like, maybe not, but then I go, but Lola's saying she would, and that's what it's based on, Lola's opinion. Why is Lola's opinion gospel? Scott goes, well, she's one of the representatives. I go, so am I. Scott goes, yep, I agree. But she's the one, if there's wiggle room, if you're willing to make some concessions as opposed to no on everything. I think that's why I go, I'm not no on everything. I agree to the assurances. I'm agreeing to the no attorney thing. That's about it. I'm here to mediate the things that we agreed to mediate, that the board knew that we were going to mediate. Scott's like, okay, so what she just went over is all within the scope of what we agreed to mediate. I go, well, that's a no from me. Okay, but I would be willing to bring that as well as another option that looks like a way for him to leave the district respectfully to the board for their consideration, and they could vote on either one of those things. Scott's like, okay, well, right now it would be a termination for convenience. I go, I would say it would be a settlement deal for his resignation so that he doesn't have to say he was terminated. That would be the benefit of him accepting it. If he chooses to terminate within 30 days of whatever agenda it was on, then we would agree to a settlement. It would be that he waives all claims, all the extra money stuff, his benefits and stuff wouldn't apply, obviously. Scott goes, so effectively there is a provision for resignation. It gives him 90 days. I go, I know that. Maybe we say it's 30 days and you get this money and you waive all claims and then he doesn't get to choose the next interim superintendent. Scott goes, so some additional benefits to terminate by resignation are, I go, here's what me meeting in the middle would be. I would agree to bring that to the board as long as we bring the other one as well. I feel like that's fair. And Nicole goes, I think that's fair. Scott goes, okay, I think we're going to bring the mediator back in here. I said, can you explain all this because I don't want to say a bad word. I'm not joking, Nicole. I'm at that point. The mediator comes back in. Scott goes, so in the interest of covering all options, is there any appetite in your mind to negotiate or talk about some sort of payout for him to resign his position? Is that, and the judge / mediator goes, I do not think so, but I can ask that before I make any other counter offer. And Scott says, okay, well, we'd at least like to see if that's an option or not. The judge says, I'll go float it before I make this. If the answer is no, I will come back and tell you and go to both rooms to say no on that. Can I go back on this? And then Nicole's like, well, I guess. I go, can we share the context of, Nicole goes, yeah. So here's where we are, Your Honor. Danielle doesn't agree to most of the things on there. Lola wouldn't agree to a resignation offer. Danielle can agree, and I haven't asked Lola yet because it just came up, but Danielle can agree to bring all of Lola's stuff to the board as one proposal if Lola can agree to bring Danielle's proposal of his resignation as a second proposal. Scott goes, but he would have to agree to that. Nicole goes, yes, he'd have to agree to both, and that being the circumstances. The judge says, my guess is that he will say no, but let me go talk to my people. Nicole goes, and I'll talk to Lola. The judge says, so the reason I think he'll say that is because when I asked him earlier today why he wanted to stay, he was very passionate about the developments and progress that they've made, and he would feel like he was leaving things incomplete if he wasn't able to finish them. Nicole said, understood. I rolled my eyes so far that they hit the back of my head. Judge says, but that doesn't mean that the lawyers wouldn't say, yeah, make a demand, see what they'll pay. Nicole says, I guess our struggle is that when we presented this to the board and got these two representatives, it was clear that we weren't going to bring anything back to them without having agreement of these two. And that being said, unless we bring back two proposals, I don't know that we're going to have any agreement between these two. And the judge says, I'll let you know. The judge and the attorneys leave to go talk to Jara and Lola, and then Nicole comes back in. She's like, Lola's okay with this, that these options do not come to the board in a public meeting, that they go to the board in a closed meeting and you guys vote on which option. I go, is that even legal? Does that break open meeting law? Nicole's like, I'm not sure. I need a few minutes to look that up. She goes, I think it would be okay. First of all, are you even okay with that? I go, I mean, not really. I feel like this needs to be done in public. The community is invested. They've watched this play out. Okay, what is Lola asking specifically? She goes, she's fine with both yours and her proposal going to the board, but it needs to go before the board in a closed session. And then whichever one prevails in that closed session goes before the full board at a public meeting. I go, I kind of feel like that would, okay, like when we did the closed sessions in January through April, and we were all told at the public meeting, you have the right to do anything you want to. You can fire him, you can extend the contract, whatever, but because it's personnel information, we have to discuss what a possible extended contract would look like because we can't discuss those things at the meeting because it's confidential personnel per the NRS. This is what was told to us. Whether or not it's right, that's what was told to us. So that is why we put so much effort discussing his extension, not even for a second, because Marianne told us in this meeting, you can't talk about your opinions, his merits, nothing, only as it applies to terms of a potential contract extension. So we spent all this time and finally we were like, sure, this can be the one that we bring forward if it gets extended. Even I was like, fine, whatever the board wants. I don't care if that extension is 12 months, 15 months, 18 months, but I was still a no in general. So I feel like if we go to a closed session and we do what Lola is saying, it's putting us in the same position. Then Nicole says, the difference is that you guys didn't have pending litigation at the time. It's going to give us a lot more wiggle room to discuss more of that stuff because I'm doing it under the premise of pending litigation. That's what I'll hold the closed session under so you can have that conversation. I'm like, okay, so Lola wants both to go to closed session. Well, what if 4 trustees decide in the closed session that they want both to go to a public meeting so that the trustees can choose 1 or 2 or none of these options? Like they could say, no, let's just keep his contract as is. And if he wants to come at us with something else, then he can come at us with something else. So instead of going to the board and saying, you must choose one of these 2, they could decide if they want 1, both, or none to be on a public agenda. Instead of what Lola is saying, that we definitely have to bring only one of these forward for a vote. What if the trustees don't like either of them? As long as the board has the option to bring both of them forward so that the public can see and determine what they want, then I'm good with it. Nicole's like, okay, I'll talk to Lola. So they talk to Lola. The judge talks to Jara's attorneys. She requests me and Lola back in the same room. The judge says, okay, we worked out a new agreement that would go until June 30th, 2025, that there would be an annual increase in benefits and base pay split in a way that you mutually agree upon of $60,000 a year. You pay the attorney fees of $75,000. The joint statement is fine. However, they want you to preserve the trustee obligations as opposed to board obligations for only the release of confidential information. And they are defining confidential information as the leaking of information discussed in a closed session. For their counter on the termination provision, they are offering a pre-termination provision. If there is a disagreement on the merit of the for-cause termination that a third-party independent mutually agreeable arbitrator would determine whether for-cause is substantiated, all costs of the arbitration to be borne by the district. If it is substantiated, then he is terminated for cause. If it's unsubstantiated, then he's not terminated for cause, and the termination for cause is invalid. Nicole's like, no one took notes on that. The judge goes, well, luckily I have notes. It's that they originally asked for 2026. You countered at 2023. They went 2025. Their number before on the pay was at 395. Now they're down to 380. If you want to split the benefits, she goes through all this stuff. So Jara comes back with a counter proposal to mine, that mine was maxing out at 270. And he says, yeah, I will resign with 30-day notice, but I want $2.7 million. That's what he said. I don't say a word. I'm forcing my lips to stay closed. Nicole says, okay, I think I got it. Do you guys have any questions? I say, I think we should continue this conversation separately, right? And Scott goes, we can speak separately or in the same room. I go, I'd rather separate. I don't want to run into any issues. Nicole says, okay. We go back into the other room. Scott goes, what are your thoughts on the counter proposal? I go, okay, I'll go through my thoughts right now. Scott goes, okay. I go, here's my first thought. I came to a middle ground, I thought, which was offering two different proposals to the board. Jara determined that he did not want to do that by not coming back with another offer after $2.7 million. I say, I'm not comfortable with several aspects of the terms that I heard in there. I only agreed to try mediation. That is the only thing I agreed to try. And that was per Jara's request to us. So that was an act of good faith. That's what we agreed, that we would try mediation so that we could show that we were trying to resolve things. There was always the understanding that mediation might not work. I am not comfortable taking this proposal to the board. I was selected to represent 3 trustees. There were 3 of us who determined I would be the one to come. And Lola was also selected to represent 3 trustees. Katie was not in this. So Lola should not be given any more value over me, even if she thinks that she has 4 votes. We were both chosen by 3 trustees. So disclaimer, I'm going to have a big problem if Lola is given more value than me. And if this proposal is brought forward as is, and it's the only one, I believe that going forward in that way will defeat the purpose of mediation. And I think at this point, it's time to cut our losses and tell the board that we tried, and we do not have anything to bring forward to them at this time. And that is what I have. Those are my thoughts. Scott goes, okay. Nicole says, you and Lola are in 2 very different places. I say, I'm sure, and that's fine. We both tried all day long. We did what we promised. Nicole says, she wants to try again with somebody other than you. I go, oh, well, do you remember what I said? I was like, what do we do if mediation fails? I was trying to get the board to say, if mediation fails, then we will do this thing. Nicole's like, we need to talk about that, the next step. I go, I wanted to do that before mediation. You should always know the next step before the thing you're doing. And then I go, and I would like to try mediation with someone else other than Lola. I'd like to bring me and Lisa in there. How about that? Scott goes, there's one option to continue mediation with different representatives. And I go, then it should be neither one of us because we already tried. He goes, yeah, neither of you or one of you. I go, no, not one of us. Lola should not, if I'm not going to as well, because I bet I could get to my agreement with somebody other than Lola. How about me and Linda? Why does Lola get to choose? Scott's like, it's just one option to consider. We could swap out mediators. I say, we need to remember that we agreed to a full day mediation. That's it. This could go on forever. How long are we going to do this? I said, I feel like I've given 2 different things. I gave this originally, and I waved to my flowchart. And then I gave the idea to bring 2 different things to the board, and Lola has not compromised at all. She's been stuck on the same thing. And then we say, well, it's coming up on 4:30. We need to end it for today. The next thing is to decide, do we want to come back or not? And that's for the board to decide. And we leave mediation. But really quick though, back to fucking with Lola Brooks for fun. After this borderline traumatizing mediation / interrogation, I definitely sent Lola a box of dicks. And that's been really weighing on me since then because I'm unsure if she received it. I kept waiting for a sign, an evil glance in my direction, a snarl, but they never came. So, Lola Brooks, I know that you follow this podcast closer than anybody. Just send me a message of some sort, somehow, just a yes or a no, or just whenever you see Linda Cavazos next, just tell her yes or no. That's it, okay? Linda Cavazos, I know that you follow this podcast. Thank you again so much for being a sponsor, and please say hello to Bob and the kids for me. Linda, if you receive a message from Lola that says yes or no, please let me know as soon as possible whether I need to send her another box of dicks or not. Thank you. So after mediation, we had a board meeting and then a closed session to report what happened in mediation. It went completely off the rails. Lola told her three that I refused to cooperate. They were all furious with me. Me and Lola trying to explain what happened was going nowhere. Evelyn was losing her mind, and she was doing this thing that she does to cope, which is to sit in front of cabinets and then open and close them and slam doors, and she puts her head in the cabinet. And I'm the weird one for bringing my dog to board meetings, right? Nicole ended up saying that she would provide individual briefs for the trustees that weren't there, and then we would take some time and then regroup. We end up having several more meetings about mediation. It just goes nowhere. The 4 trustees are claiming that I was unsuccessful in mediation, that because I wouldn't agree, I failed them and I wasted the $5,000 that it cost to go to mediation, and just nonstop. It was like out of control. More meetings. We're now into May at this point. We're still meeting about Jara's claims. Nicole's coming back and telling us, like, I don't know, I did more research. We could do mediation again if you guys want. We can just wait for Jara to litigate. She goes, I reached out to John Bailey. I said, I'm just gathering info for my client. I'm not saying that you want to mediate, but if they did, would you be willing to? I learned that he has a different opinion. He still thinks that we're in the mediation process. And then she says that then she received a courtesy phone call and then a letter from John Bailey. And then she reads the letter to us. And basically it tells us that after the full day of mediation, February 28th, Jara is agreeable to the following terms and conditions to resolve his claims against the district and certain trustees in a new contract. Jara's contract term is extended until June 30th. Compensation. Oh, are you ready for this? In recognition of the fact that Dr. Jara is severely underpaid when compared to other districts across the country of a similar size school district, his annual compensation would be increased by $60,000 in a new contract. He wants the assurances included still. He wants a joint statement. He will agree to release all the claims. The district would pay his attorney fees. Or option 2, a 1-year contract extension through June 30th, 2023, and he receives retroactive compensation for increases similar to those paid by the district to its employees, the teachers, the support professionals, and administrators. He works out a bunch of math, and the math ends with him getting a retroactive payment in the amount of $142,000 to, make it even with what the teachers and the administrators and support staff got in raises. Okay. In addition, the district would pay Dr. Jara $1.5 million as consideration for release of his hostile work environment, harassment, and retaliation claims, and reimburse Dr. Jara for his attorney fees. It's just crazy, crazy, crazy. So they go through this, and then finally at May 24th, there's a closed session. We get another update from our attorney. They attempt a new strategy of going after me about all the things that we've already covered. They're trying to get me to admit fault. I don't. Clearly, they've discussed this. Maybe with all 4, I don't know, but definitely all 4 were saying the same thing. Nicole goes over this same stuff and says if we haven't picked an option by June 1st, Jara is now saying that he will be terminated for convenience on his own. This is just the craziest shit. Like, I could explain more of these meetings and it would just add another hour, 2 hours to this podcast. But at this point, we now have 3 options to choose from. Extending Jara's contract to 2026. So 4 more years, salary raise, blah, blah, blah. The same one about giving him the money like the teachers and support staff and admin got for $141,000. Or 3, now it's that we extend his contract to end the same day as the second option, June 30th, 2023, and we give him $2 million, just cut him a check. I say my opinion has not changed. We give him nothing, and if he's not happy with that, he can take us to court. Evelyn's disappointed that my position hasn't changed. Lisa and Linda are asking good clarifying questions like, we don't have to choose one of these. This is just him telling us to choose one, and if we agreed to any of this, it would come to a meeting, right? Evelyn chimes in that she suggests that the board first decides right now to commit to the things Jara wants that are outside his contract. So the board does agree to the joint statement, the release of claims, payment for his attorney fees. We request an itemized list of what got to that price and the individual assurances that the board members will behave. However, he's not getting individual assurances. Lola wants to know, can we make trustees individually responsible and remove legal obligations from the board members that aren't the problem here? How do we make individual trustees responsible? Oh, and can we censure them? Our attorney tells Lola no, and she asks who supports Evelyn's proposal or trustees do. I say let's wait it out and see if he self-terminates. If the trash wants to take itself out, who are we to stop it? So then it's June 21st. Nicole talks to Jara's lawyer again. Clearly, Jara did not self-terminate for convenience with the payout that he was going to give himself. John Bailey won't give details of his billable hours, but it's at $77,000. And then August 22nd, an item's on the board to pay John Bailey $95,000, and it's approved by the 4 trustees, even though he never sent billable hours. Okay, so August 2022 is when Nicole changed. So I had been really happy with the way Nicole was acting and trying to defend the board against Jara this whole time. And I'm not going to assume what caused that change, although based on the timing, I feel like I know. So the thing that changed at that time was that I was in chaos and very unsure of how my election would go. And I think that Nicole realized that she would have to continue working with the majority of the trustees who supported Jara. And so then she really just like flipped at this moment. I had no time or effort to give my re-election at that time. It was 2 months away and my opponent's campaign was ramping up. The person who ended up defeating me was selected by Jara and his friends, and they all went full out. CCEA, John Villardita paid for her marketing. Tommy White's group donated all of her road signs and installation. Hit pieces came out about me through the TV news. Stories that should have been about the things I was putting on the record were about me being dramatic and disruptive and using foul language. I did barely any campaigning. One, because the trustees were purposely eating up all of my extra time. We all knew that. And 2, I lost access to my social media profiles that I used to win and communicate the entire time. And I lost my phone number that I had had since I was a teenager. And 3, my kids and I were literally homeless during this time, living in weekly rentals and Airbnbs to stay in my district and close to their schools while hiding from my ex-fiance, who months and months and months after our relationship ended, I found out that he was tracking and stalking me. I found this out when he stole my car, like got in it and drove back to California where he lived. And then he launched a full-blown attack on all sorts of stuff that I had no idea that he had access to, social profiles, accounts, etc. He's trying to ruin my life because in his mind, I was supposed to get back with him by this point and I didn't. And not that it fucking matters if I did, but I know that's the next thought that comes up. And there is nothing that I did wrong, nothing that would even count as worthy of him punishing me or whatever. He was basically punishing me for not wanting to get back together with him. This is a lot of drama, whatever. Later, I realized it was this like whole game he was playing in his mind that I didn't realize he was playing. Ultimately, how dare I not want to ride off into the California sunset and live on the beach as a trophy wife, and instead I signed up to run for re-election again and prioritized my detoxing and my healing from toxic black mold over him and our relationship. So I'm fucking bitch. Okay. Anyway, instead of fighting him legally or trying to reason with him, I sold and gave away everything, and I put the things that I kept in my sister-in-law's garage, which is basically just artwork me and the kids made, photo albums, our rollerblades, 3D printer, giant Easter bunny costume, and boxes and boxes and boxes of my evidence. So I was getting rid of everything at this time. Like, hey, does anybody want this $8,000 couch? And oh no, don't touch that. It's my evidence. Anyway, that is the whole thing that I went through. It's a whole lot of drama. That's the actual only real drama that was happening, even though everything else with the board was like framed as drama. The only people that I had told about all this going on was Linda and Lisa and Nicole. Other board members would have used it against me. And I wanted to make sure that I was within the law of staying in my district by staying in an Airbnb and spending too much money on that when I could have saved money just by going to someone else's house or whatever. Anyway, I wanted to make sure that I did not vacate my district while I remained a trustee. By the way, at this exact moment, trustee Katie Williams has left town and the majority of the board is covering it up. The board is in the middle of hiring a superintendent search firm and beginning the process, and they don't want to lose their fourth vote, but she most likely has vacated her seat. Anyway, so there was just so much drama going on in my life. Again, didn't have a car. Trustee Lisa Guzman and her son Justin drove over her car because she was going out of town so that I could handle my affairs as I planned to disappear for long enough for my ex to chill out or to find someone else to obsess over and attempt to control. I'm unsure if I'll mention this again as it comes up, this personal clusterfuck, as we go through the future episodes. But either way, it is all documented on my Instagram when I told the whole story as a form of closure from a really traumatic experience, which is apparently a pattern of mine. So if you are like, what drama did she just spew out? Give me that psycho fiance and the black mold drama, then it is on Danielle Ford LV on Instagram. You just scroll down until you hit the pic in a pink dress, and then you read your way back up and you'll be all caught up on that drama. Okay, so the point that I was getting at was that I lost the election, and it was another like all hope is lost moment because of the 3 seats that were up, the other 2 went the way that we needed it to get the majority vote. Linda won her re-election, and Irene Cepeda was defeated by Brenda Zamora, who basically replaced me in the 3 that votes in ways that are pro-community and pro-educators and pro-public education. So I do think that Nicole just realized her future was with this new board and that her job ultimately is to represent the majority of the board. I'm not sure about that, but also let's not forget that Nicole and Marianne Miller report directly to Steve Wolfson, which brings us to this next story called Full Circle. It's a mini story. It's a mini circle. Recently, I looked back at Evelyn's campaign donors, and there was a name that I wasn't familiar with years before when I first seen it. That name is John Bailey. Okay, Jara's attorney donated to Evelyn's campaign. Maybe he donated to every trustee candidate? Nope. He has a rather small list of people that he's donated to, and other names on that list are names that we have met throughout these stories about Jara. Steve Wolfson, Aaron Ford. So later when I was reevaluating all of this is when I became aware of some of these very curious and disturbing connections, and I was pretty mad at myself for missing them because these would have been legit reasons to disrupt their plans, but also this whole thing was a purposely designed whirlwind, and it makes sense that it flew under the radar this entire time. So let's review and connect some dots. We know that Jara and Lindy Schumacher were buddy-buddy. He even used taxpayer funds to pay CCSD's lobbyists to meet with her about campaigns. Lindy runs a foundation that's kind of like the PEF, the amazing nonprofit arm of CCSD that Judy Steele started to support CCSD in areas that the state was lacking in funding. She raised hundreds of millions of dollars over 25 years-ish and basically carried the district on her back. Judy Steele is like basically the Princess Diana of Clark County School District. Like somebody hating Judy Steele is enough evidence to prove that they're a bad guy. Lindy Schumacher has her little nonprofit, the Fulfillment Fund, operating out of a CCSD campus for a few years. Lindy can only dream of it becoming like the PEF or replacing the PEF. Lindy's executive director, Evelyn Garcia Morales, runs for the CCSD school board and wins. Evelyn immediately reveals herself as a ruthless bitch. She gleefully responds to Jara's psychopathic and narcissistic tendencies by supporting his intimidation tactics and vengeance. Now, Lindy Schumacher is highly involved at the PEF. Kirsten Searer is running it. John Bailey was on it. John Bailey is donating to Steve Wolfson, Aaron Ford, Evelyn Garcia Morales, and Steve Wolfson is in charge of our attorneys who are protecting Jara and the 4 trustees who are doing unethical things. Okay, so we have like an investigatory episode coming up, and we're really gonna do full circle dot connecting. Let me tell you about August really quick. So this is another one of those little things that Jara does whenever he can to show his dominance and punish people in super weird ways that don't even make sense. So when Jara did this, I was like thinking like, what the hell? I was like super pissed. I thought that he was doing something to try to permanently exclude me from briefings. Like I didn't know what was going on. But then later I realized that it was just because he was like feeling really confident and like he was back in control, that he just wanted to pull a douche move just because. So okay, so Jara and I had been having phone briefings for years because I didn't want to be in the same room with him. Sometimes it would like go back and forth and it'd be like, can you call my other phone? Oh, it's going to be 5 minutes. Oh, can we move the phone call? Whatever. So when I got an email that Jara wanted to start using Google Meet, I was like, that makes sense because you can just call the line and wait for that person to be there. We should have probably been doing this all along. So it's my briefing time. I call in and he says, I told you that it's a video call and you need to put your camera on. I go, no, you said it's a Google Meet. I'm not in a stationary place. There's no reason that I need my video on. What are your updates? Give me the briefing. He says that he won't continue the briefing without my camera on. I get super pissed. He hangs up. I email our attorney and President Cepeda. I tell them that I called at my time slot. I tell them what happened. I'm like, I cannot ignore his refusal to communicate with me anymore. Not only is he not adhering to his own assurances, but he's violating the rights of my constituents. He does not have operational control of his bosses or how we pass information back and forth. Once again, we are his bosses. I'm one of his bosses, whether he likes it or not. I was elected to be his boss. Figure this out. Tell Jara to call me back. Like, I'm pissed. Then I was told that we will discuss it in a closed session. And then during that closed session, the majority of the board discussed and determined and agreed that Jara can make whatever rules he wants to for the trustee briefings. So that's just super frustrating. It's not worth its own story title. That was just another day as a trustee. This is just what life was as a trustee. Okay. This next story is called The Room Where It Happens. It could also be called How the Sausage Gets Made. So it is end of September 2022. The 4 mean trustees were still furious that their mediation ambush had not been successful in giving Jara the farm. And now remember how Jara's contract says that he should be evaluated by December 15th each year? Well, Evelyn and Lola basically woke up one day and said, screw it, let's do it in September. They called another closed session in the room where it happens for September 7th, 2022. And here is what happened in the next board attorney session. To recap, it's nearly a year after Jara's termination when he came in and he said that he had these claims and then he was rehired. We did not give him an extension or a raise or the money he wanted. The only person that came out a winner of all of this was Jara's attorney, John Bailey, who got $95,000 of taxpayer dollars. Evelyn says that we need to make a decision as Jara's contract termination date is approaching in 4 months. Nicole says we should discuss his performance. Evelyn wants to provide stability for the district. What we choose to do now will determine the trajectory for the district for the next few years. We should offer Jara a several-year extension to ensure that we keep that stability of leadership. They've given cabinet raises to keep Jara's staff here. It's all set up to finally support student achievement, and giving Jara a 3-year contract extension will ensure that we're not going to be spending the next 6 months looking for a new superintendent. Lola and Katie agree. Lola says districts that keep superintendents a long time are the most successful. Irene says she'd like to wait and decide after Jara's evaluation. And they know that Irene is a deciding vote. So she's essentially the only trustee. Every decision is based on how she feels and how she's being manipulated. At that time, the other 3 agree with her. They're like, yeah, Irene, that's a good point. We'll plan the evaluation first. Now remember, his evaluation had always been in December. In the meantime, they want Nicole to find out what type of a new contract extension Jara would be good with, assuming that he has a positive evaluation and wants to stay. Trustee Linda Cavazos is uncomfortable with the direction this is going. She reminds them that we just gave $95,000 of district funds to pay John Bailey after saying we wouldn't even give $50,000 without an itemized list. But then he responded with, now it's $95,000. She keeps repeating that she's very uncomfortable and she thinks that asking Jara for terms this early is going to lead to him getting a contract extension without following a proper process. I say that Jara might have a few decent redeeming qualities. I would consider surplusing him to the facilities department at a level 2 coordinator max because he's a terrible leader and not even close to the best superintendent that we could possibly have for the district. I immediately declare that is my opinion. I do not need a rebuttal about it. Lola and Evelyn. As a reminder, this was during my lowest point. Lisa was not at this meeting because she was out of town. I had driven her car while in the middle of trying to disappear from my ex before he came back to town. Okay, so many times I had not been in the mood for their shit, but at this point I had absolutely zero fucks left to give. I was in pure survival mode, and I knew that the energy to fight them would be wasted at this point. I say if we renew his contract, no doubt he's going to get a substantial raise. That's not fiscally responsible for the board to do. We don't need to have a big national search like we did to get Jara. That's not the only way to get a superintendent. There's at least 5 methods to hire a superintendent, but let's not pretend like we don't all know where this is going. Lola's statement about data that shows that districts are successful because they kept a superintendent a long time is stupid. If a superintendent was successful and loved by the community and staff, then that superintendent would obviously be offered a contract extension and remain as superintendent for a very long time. That superintendent wouldn't have the governor and the state superintendent and the admin union and half of the board constantly trying to fire them. I'm done even trying to rationalize with them at this point. I say this is very predictable. It's what you four always do. I've been down this road. I got the bumper sticker, got the refrigerator magnet. I'd actually prefer that whatever your little plan is, that you just get it over with so that we don't all have to go through the motions for several more months. If you're going to do it, just do it. You can just tell us what your intent is, and I'll tell you right now that I don't agree with that. Fine. You guys have the votes. I'm tired. I'm busy. Do your thing. Lola goes, I'd actually like to say that in 2021, after the superintendent was fired, the governor actually called me personally and said that that was a mistake for us to do. I respond, really? Well, I think you're full of shit because I got a call from the governor's office much earlier than that to relay a message from Sisolak to please handle your superintendent. And if you're unable to, we will begin the motions to appoint school board members. And that causes Lola to drop her little act that she's doing. She straightens up. She goes, okay, then let me explain my intent. I will make a decision about Jara's employment after this evaluation piece. I want Nicole to draft a possible contract in the meantime. Obviously, it won't be posted until we have another closed session about it, but we will do this with urgency because if we draw it out, Jara might not want to stay. And who could blame him? And then if that happens, a large portion of his cabinet will leave. I start laughing. I'm just like, I don't care anymore. I go, that is not true. You are just saying words. Jara's cabinet hates him so much that he had a 400% cabinet turnover rate. He had to bribe his cabinet members with huge raises so that they wouldn't turn on him, which they were all itching to do. Lola goes, no, they told me. They told me. I go, oh, all of them? All of them told you that they would leave? She goes, yeah, while they were complaining about you, they all did. I go, yeah, I'm really fucking sure. Lola goes, nobody asked you to interrupt me. Evelyn goes, that's enough, thank you. I'm laughing maniacally, literally on the verge of a nervous breakdown, but only Linda and Nicole know that at this point. So Nicole's like, so I'll reach out and I'll see what terms he's interested in. Lola goes, yeah, and draft a contract based on those terms. Nicole says, okay, I'll get on it. Linda, even more uncomfortable, but still trying, but knows that we're outnumbered and knows that I'm going through it, says, wait, so are we going to go around the room and are we going to get a count of which trustees want to? Then I interrupt her. I go, no, Linda, we're doing whatever the fuck Lola wants to do. Linda doesn't know what to say, but she's trying. She goes, so wait, exactly what is the consensus? Nicole says, you guys can deliberate on a consensus. I go, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. Nicole goes, okay, so I will reach out to the other party and come back to you. I go, it doesn't matter. I go, I have to go. This was a waste of my time. There was never another closed session. Within 3 weeks, Jara was evaluated and a new contract that looked exactly like what he asked for in mediation nearly a year ago was posted on the agenda without even a draft being sent to the board. After that session, Evelyn agendized a meeting for his evaluation to go over the results. There was no process with trustee ratings or space for comments or suggestions or any feedback whatsoever like his prior evals had. The entire process was, how did Jara do on the 3 things that he chose for himself? I never thought that I would actually miss those clusterfucks that were Jara's previous evaluations. At least Lola would put the effort in to make up some bullshit to try to appear as though she was trying for a fair process. Evelyn just DGAF. But then I fucking noticed that the 3rd metric that Jara chose is not the same as it was when he chose it. I read it earlier. It was about having qualified educators in classrooms. And then the new one says, hire 1,655 new teachers. That's it. So I'm trying to get answers as to why this changed. After we voted to approve the language, they're not even trying to give arguments or anything. And see, one of Jara's strengths actually is in recruiting teachers. He has this special ability of being able to give lots of tax dollar money to recruitment firms and get teachers hired on paper. The fact that they don't stay and that he drives experienced, effective teachers out is irrelevant to his skill set of recruiting teachers. And that's why his evaluation metric was changed to recruitment only. And that's why Evelyn and Lola were able to give him glowing reviews and praise during his 2022 evaluation. Seriously, Evelyn was so gross. I would share a clip, but I don't even want to see it. It's too gross. She's just like, "You're the greatest superintendent. Oh, we're so fortunate for your leadership." Ugh.
Future Danielle here again. Let's flash forward to 2024 when Jara's purposeful wasting of public funds finally caught up with him. Here's a news report about Jara authorizing staff to go on recruitment trips, I'm doing air quotes, to vacation spots over holiday weekends on the school district's dime. When Darcy Spears contacted me to be interviewed, I happily accepted. Soon after this clip aired, the Federal Department of Education announced that they were going to look into CCSD, and the spending of all of its ESSER COVID relief dollars. Remember the ESSER hustlers story from part 2? The $777 million? That is the money that was used for the recruitment trips that you are going to learn about right now. And in a few minutes, I'll be telling you about Jara requesting to resign from the position of superintendent early in 2024. And that was right after the Department of Ed announced that they were looking into this spending. It could be a coincidence that per Jara's contract, if he was to be put under investigation, he would receive no payout at all whether he resigned or was terminated, but I doubt it.
Last year, 13 Investigates began tracking your tax dollars as they took flight, sometimes landing at the beach. The Clark County School District dodged accountability by not answering our questions, so we found a way to get the superintendent on the record about some of the recruitment trips that have recently come under fire. Trips critics say are even more questionable in light of the new number of teacher vacancies. From Miami Beach to the island of Oahu, Clark County School District staff went across the country in search of teachers to help fill what's now more than 1,300 vacancies in Valley classrooms. As we reported in early December, CCSD documents show district staff made more than 50 trips to attend job fairs, conventions, and other events in the 14 months from September of 22 to November 3rd of 2023. All expense travel paid for by taxpayers, totaling more than $150,000.
I think that's absolutely insane.
Former school board trustee Danielle Ford.
I think that the public deserves to know every single cent that was spent, who it went to, why that decision was made, and whether or not there was a return on investment for them.
We still don't know whether any teachers have actually been hired from any of those trips. For our December story, the district declined our multiple requests for on-camera interviews with human resources or anyone else, including Superintendent Jesus Jara. But earlier this month...
Thank you for asking the question, Darcy. It's good to see you.
We were given a 10-minute window with Dr. Jara on a day he was talking to all media about the new union contract. So we took some of that time to ask him about some particularly questionable recruiting trips, like the one to a beachfront hotel in Florida that cost nearly $40,000. Looking back on the Miami Beach recruiting trip where 17 employees went to Florida the week of July 4th for a district-created event where only 2 people showed up and neither filled out an application, was that a successful expense of tax dollars and employee time?
Well, obviously it wasn't, but I can tell you this, in the state of Florida, teachers are under attack by the governor, by the legislature, so why not go out and recruit where we can try to find, teachers to come, where we're very inclusive. Well, we've gone to, we've been recruiting outside before I got here. Obviously, we didn't get a return on what we wanted, so we got to relook at an ROI. But to me, we have to continue looking and go to places where the education, public education is not supported, and I came from that state. So it wasn't, I wasn't there, I didn't go.
At that point, CCSD Chief Communications Officer Todd Story, who was sitting in the room off camera, tried to cut the interview off.
That's it. Thank you.
But first,
I do want to ask, and you can get back to me on this, the Hawaii trips that were also part of the recruiting, any travel outside the continental U.S. has to be approved in advance by the superintendent of schools, according to CCSD regulations. You approve those Hawaii
Absolutely.
trips?
Absolutely.
Were those successful?
Well, I don't know what the return was.
It's his responsibility to know, and it's his responsibility to report it to the board, and it's the board's responsibility to determine if that is the best way to use the taxpayer funds that they were elected to protect. So at the end of the day, it falls on the board of trustees.
And if that had come before you as a trustee?
I would have been pissed.
we tried asking the current trustees, but none of them responded. In September of 2021, the trustees voted to muzzle themselves, adopting this policy for all board public communications. The policy says trustees shall refrain from speaking individually to the media, instead deferring without comment to the superintendent or their designee. The policy does allow the board president to speak on behalf of the trustees, but President Evelyn Garcia Morales did not respond to us either.
We were elected to be a voice for the people and to be good stewards of public funds, and so that's what I kept doing, and they tried to silence me with this policy, but I ignored it the remainder of the couple years I was on the board.
Why would a publicly elected board vote on a policy to silence themselves from speaking to the media, to the public that elected them into office?
That's the question I'm trying to figure out. I have no idea why you would even run for this position if you don't intend to get answers and hold people accountable.
We did get one more answer from Dr. Jara about why staff took 2 recruiting trips to Hawaii in February and September of last year.
The educators in Hawaii are living under poverty, so why not bring them here where they can be successful? So,
as long as they come, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
If you will it.
Jara then took off his microphone to conclude the interview.
Okay, thank you guys.
We previously reported that the February Hawaii trip involved 2 employees and cost about $4,600 tax dollars. We're still waiting on the cost of the September trip, but we do know, like Miami, that was a district-created event where at least 8 employees stayed at a beachfront hotel. The district says 100 candidates showed up at the event, 2 resumes were collected, and 3 were recommended for hire.
That's not a thing that we need to do. There's social media marketing we could be doing to reach people in Hawaii. We could be doing digital conferences. There's so many other things and ways that we could be recruiting people than sending district staff to recruitment trips.
There were other trips to about 16 cities between September and November of 2023, but we still don't know where and at what cost. The district has delayed providing us that and other information 4 times so far. And the latest email we got from them said the information we've been asking for is in the queue for administrative approval. They promised a further response tomorrow. We'll let you know what comes of that.
So let's take a thinking break. What reason would they have for doing Jara's evaluation unnecessarily early, 3 months early? Well, on October 5th, the agenda for the next board meeting posts without even a draft being sent to me, Lisa, or Linda, and there's the item for a contract extension and a raise for Superintendent Jara. It's identical to what I refused to negotiate during mediation. Again, they don't fucking care about rules or optics anymore. They are just doing whatever they want in broad daylight, gleefully free of any accountability. Elections are about to happen. It wasn't clear how the board would look in January 2023 when Jara's contract was set to expire again, and they wanted to ensure that Jara's clause were locked into CCSD. They knew that even if the new board didn't want to keep Jara, that they would have to terminate him for convenience and pay him out the remainder of his contract. Jara's contract was extended to June 30th, 2026, with 4 trustees voting for it and 3 voting against it. Lisa, Linda, and I all put on the record that the Ford trustees were abusing their power by doing this early and right before an election. If Jara was to leave or get fired before his contract ends and the district has to pay him out, it will be those four who wasted taxpayer money. Sidebar, during a closed session around this time, Katie started going off and speaking over me. She constantly does this like talking over somebody thing. It's her only move because she can't come up with any actual logical replies. So she started doing it when I was talking, and then I started talking over her, repeating the same thing to her, which was just shut the fuck up, Katie, shut the fuck up, Katie, Katie, shut the fuck up. So then a week after, she's attacking teachers on Twitter, as she does. I chimed in and I said, I'm going to tell you the same thing that I told you in a recent closed session. Shut the fuck up, Katie, shut the fuck up, Katie. Hey, Katie, shut the fuck up. This was right before elections, and I had a candidate interview already scheduled with Channel 8. Anyone want to know what I was asked about the most? If I think that voters should re-elect somebody who uses my language and bullies other trustees. What kind of example is this for kids? I say, well, I teach my kids to stand up to bullies, and that's what I did because Katie Williams is a bully.
They are elected leaders responsible for the direction of the Clark County School District, but watching a CCSD meeting can seem more like just watching a reality show.
Constant arguments, both in person and on social media.
Infighting among the Clark County School Board of Trustees seen in full view and posted online.
What can I do to help you improve your social media habits, because it's tanking this entire organization and the group dynamics.
But the 7 trustees have tried to get along, at least through trainings costing Clark County taxpayers thousands. Trustee Danielle Ford is often the most outspoken. This tweet from May directed to Trustee Williams saying, "Shut the expletive up." This was a meeting in June. Ford says the district is spending even more money on training. Sessions, she says, are not beneficial. She tells us she'd rather sit and learn about policy and law.
There's a roadmap now in front of you that you can choose to move forward on.
In May, the board talked about the policies it paid to develop. Notes and recommendations include not to post individually on social media and instead, quote, speaking with one voice to send a clear message on the priorities and progress of district goals.
I think our community wants to know, and if I could, I'm almost asking on behalf of the community, is that the best way to have debate and discussion on social media? What say you?
It's not the best way to have debate and discussion, but it's the only way because of how limited the trustees have become in our power. When I joined the board, there was time on each meeting agenda for the trustees to put their concerns on the record. There was time for the trustees to request agenda items that could be new policies or looking at something old and doing more of it, doing less of it. And through previous presidents, our abilities to speak on the record we've been silenced. So I do put it on social media.
So there has been essentially a reduction of power with the trustees.
Absolutely.
And therefore social media. Now here's my issue though with social media, again, speaking as a parent and other parents watching. We tell the kids don't do cyberbullying. We tell the kids don't be hard on each other on social media. Yet our leaders, our trustees are doing it. So how do we kind of par that with what we're telling our children?
I don't tell my kids that. I tell my kids to have ethics and have morals and make them known and always stand up for the little guy and do the right thing at the end of the day. Bullying, the definition of bullying is an abuse of power. So what is happening at the meetings is bullying, and what is happening on social media, at least from my end, is trying to speak the truth and telling people what's going on.
Trustee Ford, what are we going to do on a new issue about learning loss? We know that the math scores and English scores went down in such large numbers because of the fact kids were learning at home and they were falling further and further behind. High school math proficiency under 20%, English scores down. What do you think we need to do as a trustee, as a leader, to get these kids back on track, catch them back up?
We need to retroactively change some of the policies and decisions that have happened since COVID, since distance learning. When the shutdown happened and when we were coming up with ways to reopen schools, we heard from a lot of our educators and principals that we were going to be experiencing these problems. Kids are going to be behind. They're telling us, we're seeing parents doing their tests for them. Kids are so isolated. Everyone's dealing with mental health. There's going to be more violence in schools. There's going to be more challenges. How did the superintendent react to that? He bribed all principals who were within 3 years of retiring to leave the district early and pay them their retirement. At a time when we needed the most experienced leaders, especially for secondary, middle school and high school campuses, we begged these people to leave to get their retirement payout right now. In my opinion, that's because the superintendent is a person who likes to control staff, and he doesn't want people who know what is going on to debate him or actually bring their good ideas forward. If we had a different superintendent, we could then do a please come back to CCSD campaign. We could beg our teachers who have left because of failed leadership and our principals and central office admin who have left because they did not want to work under the current superintendent. And those people can help fix the district.
Do you think something that strong needs to be done? Of course, there's 1,400 teacher vacancies at the beginning of the year. We know it's such a problem. You think there almost has to be a level of a campaign to get teachers back? What would you do if you were in the superintendent's position?
Teachers have to know they're not going to come back the way it is. They're not going to come back to a district that has a culture of bullying, intimidation, abuse, retaliation. It's really bad. Right now, the current climate of the district is do as I say, not as I do. Follow these programs, be a robot. We don't want your original ideas, and if you give them or if you speak to the board, you are punished. They need to know for sure that that's not going to be the case anymore, and I guarantee you that we have people here in our city that will come back and help us get the district back on track.
Last question, but we're out of time. So short answer on this one, if you would. Grade inflation, when I was a kid, if a kid got an F on something, he just got an F.
Right.
You failed something. Now parents are hearing, well, you're going to retake it and retake it again, and they're worried about grade inflation. What say you on that issue within CCSD?
I think the grade inflation has been happening because of the retakes, like you're saying.
Right.
I don't really know how I feel about minimum F. The intent is that if a kid is struggling, if they, get a 0 on a test, it's not going to pull their whole grade down. So I get that intent, but the fact that the superintendent in the past year put the effort put on teachers to have to allow students to retake tests as many times as they want to and choose which work they even turn in the first place to get graded on. So it just seems like maybe somebody wanted their evaluation to have a good result with grades. And by the way, that first metric where the third graders, it seems like they met the goal, only about half of our students even got tested last year. So how accurate can it be?
What we wanted to do at Channel 8 is give people on both sides of the aisle a voice, and that's what we're going to do right up until the election. So we appreciate you spending this time with us and commenting on a number of different issues. Thank you, Trustee Ford.
You're welcome.
CCSD elections are nonpartisan. 3 trustees are up for re-election this November, including Board President Cepeda and Trustee Ford.
My point in sharing that is that while all the news media is questionable, there are some major ties between the business community that controls education in CCSD and Channel 8 specifically. Okay, November 2022, I lost my election. It is what it is, and I will cover that more in a future Storytime episode when we get there. But I just wanted to point out that Jara's friend and boudoir shaming buddy Tommy White's group donated all the printing and installation of my opponent's signs. In 2023, the board dynamic changes again. Evelyn is voted president. Now, all of a sudden, CCEA wants to fire Jara. John Bellardita had seen an opportunity to get some control, an opportunity to play the hero and get street cred with his union members so that they keep paying him and he can keep affording to manipulate elections by funding school board campaigns. So he uses a CCEA PAC to do a whole media push to fire Jara. John Bellardita, who spoke on behalf of CCSD about the bill AB2 to protect Jara from getting fired, who got Lola Brooks reelected over a teacher that was running against her. That John Bellardita is now calling for Jara to be fired. Okay. A bill passes to add 4 appointed members from local municipalities to the CCSD school board. Everybody wants the dysfunction of the board to stop. Everyone's blaming individual trustees, but where is the dysfunction really coming from? That's the million-dollar question. Oh, by the way, in June of 2023, that same month that Jara kept putting his contract to go to, he qualified for PERS, and now he always gets forever Nevada taxpayer dollars for his retirement. Now, in 2024, if you have been following all the episodes, I have been updating about the Jara saga. And so you might already know that there was an item with a letter from Jara asking the board to resign with no notice and giving him a $500,000 payout. The next item on that agenda was to permanently hire his second in command throughout all of this, Brenda Larson Mitchell, who has been being trained the last couple years by the same people who trained Jara. I have no doubt that the board would have approved all of this, except that the community showed up for real and 4 trustees voted against paying out $500 to him. But at the next meeting, he was able to resign with a $250,000 payout, and Brenda Larson Mitchell was made interim superintendent instead of permanent.
The leaders of CCSD face 2 big decisions tomorrow. Will they approve the superintendent's resignation and give him the payout he wants? And will they appoint his number 2 as his replacement without interviewing other candidates? Fox 5's Kim Passoff listened in on a virtual town hall tonight.
You can expect a full house to be here tomorrow as the trustees decide the fate of the superintendent and potentially his successor.
There are a lot of feelings at the community level.
Jashante Marshall, co-founder of 1865 No Racism in Schools, led a community discussion with parents submitting questions to former CCSD trustee Daniel Ford, trying to break down Jara's request to resign with a buyout.
But if he wants to resign before his contract ends, he's more than welcome to. However, he must give 90-day notice. And then he must work in those 90 days and then, of course, get paid for those 90 days. That gives the school board a buffer to appoint an interim.
But that is not what Jara wants to do, according to his resignation letter. He wants to resign with 2 weeks' notice and wants his contract amended to be paid out for much more.
You're going to try to get a year's salary out of taxpayers and leave the district scrambling.
While that is the former trustee's opinion, it will be up to the current board's 7 voting members to ultimately decide what to do with Jara's request.
They could potentially appoint his number 2, who is Dr. Brenda Larson Mitchell, as the new superintendent. But there are concerns that no other candidates are being considered for the job and that there's no public input. Fox 5 spoke with former CCSD trustee Daniel Ford about the concern.
Everybody is very upset because as the superintendent of a large urban district or of any district is an important position, and the people should have a say into who is hired. Of course, it's the board's decision to hire somebody, but to not bring any candidates forward, that is just like unheard of.
Ford, along with representatives from the NAACP, Make the Road Nevada, Hispanics in Politics, as well as the ACLU, all took part in an online discussion last night about how to ask the trustees to not immediately appoint a new superintendent and conduct some type of search.
The superintendent remains in his current role until the matter is resolved. Many people at the meeting feeling like they're not being heard by the trustees in their final vote. Pretty much the entire room, minus 1 or 2 people here and there, said fire the superintendent, do not give him a penny as he exits his role. He's been in that role for the past 5 years or so. Now, there are reasons of why he should be out. Here's a list. The incident involving a district officer slamming a student to the ground near Durango High School and how that was handled. The recent cyber attack on the district. A lawsuit regarding a post sent out from Jara's X account about the president of the teachers union, and controversy about money spent on a recruitment trip to Miami over 4th of July weekend, to name a few.
Giving the superintendent $250,000 to leave is unacceptable. It's an affront to every single employee in the Clark County School District, and it is a gross misuse of taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, so as the district says goodbye to Dr. Jara tomorrow, the big question is who will take his place. We know the answer for the interim, but who will get the job in the long term? That has yet to be decided.
The CCSD board is currently in the process of hiring a national search firm to bring superintendent candidates from across the country. The same process as last time to hire Jesus Jara, since you know that worked out so great. Now I've got cat hair everywhere, you little nut. Oh my gosh, you ruined my life. But I love you. Now let's recap some numbers, okay? Oh my God, this is my Aaron Brockovich moment. I've been waiting for this. Okay, here I go. Oh, you want numbers? I got numbers coming out of my ears. 80 plus. That's the number of hours the board has spent in closed session about Superintendent Jara. 95,000. That's the number of dollars given to Jara's attorney. 3 million. That's how much Jara received in salary and benefits from taxpayers. 250,000. That's the amount that Jara walked away with after resigning. 36,000. That's the amount of students that unenrolled during Jara's tenure. And with all those numbers I gave you, 0 is the amount of times that Jara has been held accountable for anything. I could do better if I practiced. Now, this episode was very long and robust. I know if you made it this far, God bless you. It was intended to tell the story of Jesus Jara. It's closure for me, good riddance. I wanted it to exist on the interwebs for anyone who researches his name in the future. If I can be even a little part of Jesus Jara never ever getting hired at a school district ever again and bringing harm to that community, then it would have all been worth it. This episode was incredibly difficult to re-enter mentally, organize, and explain. I ran into so many forms of resistance, which I battled so hard, mostly on my mindset. I also got super sick from this. But we are nearing the end of the first section. Okay, I don't want to call it a season of this podcast. And we still haven't gotten into the really bad stuff. Okay, all the things that are discussed around privatization of and the attack on public education that everybody talks about, we have not even scratched the surface. The no bid contracts, the consulting firms that cost millions and do nothing, the grading policies, evaluations and methods to make educators quit, vouchers and opportunity scholarships, the land grabs and the leasing back of school buildings, and so much more. That is all coming. My intent for this first section was to show how they're able to get away with the bad stuff, how they get control through the hiring of superintendent search firms, the placing of superintendent puppets, helping that superintendent to rein in the board, fund board members to ensure that that happens, and then help support them all legally behind the scenes. There's no fucking way in this world that myself, Dr. Linda Young, Linda Cavazos, and Lisa Guzman are the only 4 school board members in the country who have experienced whatever this was. I don't know the word for it. It's like if the words trauma and steamrolling and gaslighting and mental abuse had like a really weird 4-word sum and somehow had a word baby. That is what the word would be for this. I don't know that that word exists. Many school districts have been taken over. That is true. Many have witnessed it, but few have experienced it. Everything that these motherfuckers do is a page from a playbook, from the state legislation that they push to their funded politicians, to their cookie cutter employment and vendor contracts that they give their superintendents, to the reopening plans they come up with over a weekend in a think tank as a way to profit off of a global pandemic. All of this is textbook. It's all proven. That's not just me saying it. What I'm saying is there is also a playbook to fund the school board candidates and contract with search firms to place superintendents who will take over the school board using legal threats and psychological warfare on one trustee at a time until their spirit is crushed enough that they just fucking give up. But I'm here to tell you that you can't break something that's already broken. Checkmate, bitch. So here's my thinking now. In a previous video, I put out a call for anybody interested in joining a class action lawsuit against the Board of Trustees and to help elect better pro-public education people. That's still in the oven and it's doable because it's been done. But the bigger thing that I'm thinking now is like, let's go after the big bosses, the ones who wrote the playbook, the ones that kept their hands clean while someone else went on a rampage through our school district. The person who hired the hitman is just as much to blame. And they have deployed a lot of hitmen and women, hit people. So you could use that same form to join if you haven't yet. There is an investigatory episode I mentioned coming up. And after that, we will be connecting up. So that page to join is unravelingeducation.com/fightback. By the way, I never intended to do this podcast. After my term on the board ended, I applied for several opportunities to try to get a project funded and to like hire out a crew to document the corruption that's happening in CCSD. I did not get those. I met with national reporters and public education advocates trying to explain to them in hopes that they would want to write about this. Nobody was interested. So this is not what I plan to be doing right now, but I couldn't move forward in several aspects of my life knowing that all of this was going on and feeling like I had perspective and information that would make it make sense. So when I decided to do this podcast, it took me about 5 months to figure out what it was going to be. I replanned it 3 times. It was after my second near launch, and I was getting stuck on all the facts. Like, is this too many facts? Am I missing facts? How do I explain why these facts are important? And then I got this like strong feeling or voice saying, just tell your story. Tell the story. And that is why I've done it the way that I have. And that's why some episodes are 3 days apart and 30 minutes long. And then some episodes are 2 months apart and 5 hours long. I'm not trying to publish a perfect podcast. I'm not even trying to publish a podcast that makes sense. I'm trying to tell a story that anybody who wants to learn the entire story can absorb by going linearly through it. And it is still very early in the story. So thank you very much to those of you who have followed it so far. If you are just finding this episode, I suggest circling back to the earliest story time and catching up from there. And if you do not want to miss the next episode, subscribe. It could be tomorrow. It could be in a year. And if you got value, please donate. It literally takes my sweat and tears to produce this, and equipment and software and all those things are not cheap. You can visit unravelingeducation.com/sponsor to find several easy ways to donate or sponsor an episode. Thank you so much for your time and your patience with this episode. Keep unraveling and keep caring.